Fallout has been one of my favorite game series for a while now, or at least it was before it got ruined by the good folks over at Bethesda. Ironically, my first Fallout game was a Bethesda one, Fallout 3. Little 10-year-old me played it at my uncle's house, and eventually I got it for myself on the PS3. 10 years later, it's still one of, if not my favorite game of all time. I've since had the chance to play Fallout, Fallout 2, 3, New Vegas 4, and completed all of them except for 2 at least once. But for Fallout 2, I got stuck at the Frank Horgan boss fight because my dumbass spec'd out small guns and my combat shotgun does literally 1 or no damage per multi-shot. So, best case scenario, I'd have to survive 999 rounds with him, and I have neither the time nor patience to get there. Anyways, suffice it to say, I know a lot about Fallout. I could probably answer any lore questions without skipping a beat. However, if I do make any mistakes talking about the lore, go ahead and let me know. Just don't be a dick, simple stuff really. So, having experienced the experience every Fallout game has to offer, I'm going to go through each one and pick out the great parts to combine them into the perfect Fallout game, and also discuss some of their flaws, starting with where it all began. Fallout was not originally developed by Bethesda. It was originally created by the folks over at Interplay. It was meant to be the spiritual successor to Wasteland, which was also developed by Interplay, with the greedy fuckers at EA owning the rights to the game. Fallout has a pretty simple plot, and this is a good time to mention there are going to be heavy spoilers for each Fallout game except 76, because I never finished it. Fallout follows the story of the Vault Dweller who is sent from his vault, Vault 13, to find a replacement for the water chip, because the only one they have is broken, so you venture off into the 2161 wasteland and look for a replacement. Your overseer tells you to start looking at Vault 15, and on the way is a settlement called Shady Sands, and this is the first thing Fallout 1 does perfectly. In Fallout 3, for example, as soon as you leave the vault, there are huge signs and roads leading you straight to your first town, Megaton. While this is good at progressing the story, it's a bit heavy-handed. Having Shady Sands on the way to Vault 15 makes the player feel like they've actually accomplished something in the first 5 to 10 minutes of gameplay. And if they decide to completely ignore Shady Sands, that's fine, they can still go on to Vault 15. That is, until they realize that they can't explore the whole vault, so the player is essentially forced into going back to Shady Sands to find something to get them down. For some reason, the guard just happened to be carrying a rope, and you can buy it off them, which is again a bit heavy-handed. I would honestly just remove something like this completely because it's kind of pointless. What is honestly the point of having the player go back, get rope, click the rope, then click the hole in Vault 15? When the player realizes that, surprise, the water chip isn't in Vault 15, they've hit a dead end. They're gonna go back to Shady Sands anyways. Shady Sands has a few side quests for the player to do, but they're mostly just fighting sections, one of which is pretty easy for a low level character, stop the Rad Scorpions, and one of which is borderline impossible for a low level character, rescue Tandy from the Raiders. Both quests have basically no value, outside of some XP and subpar loot. Not to mention neither of these quests lead you to plot relevant towns. Hell, they don't even lead you to towns with other side quests. These locations exist for the sole purpose of doing these quests and then get forgotten forever. What the starter town should do is have side quests that lead you to at least one other significant location, one with lots of quests. Maybe these raiders live in Junktown or Necropolis or the Hub. But whatever, let's go save Tandy. Meaning, let's save the game and try speech checks over and over again, because there's not a fucking chance in hell we're winning this fight. Maybe if this game were in turn-based we'd have a chance, but it's an old game, so it's just French bread. And once again, this is a big fault of Fallout. This isn't fun, this isn't challenging to the player, this is just annoying for no reason. Why would such an early quest have so many heavily armored guards? I mean, there aren't that many, there's only 4 if I remember correctly, but that's also quite a challenge for such a low level character. So the game basically tests the player's patience until they can pass a speech check, and off we go back to Shady Sands for our reward. So you get a hefty chunk of change from Aradesh and some decent XP. Now, if you then talk to Tandy and get her to like you, then she'll move the main quest along. Otherwise, you can skip the entire quest and talk to Ian to get the same information, and you get him as a companion. So why would I rescue Tandy? Anyways, then you get Junktown on your map and you can finally keep going. Once you get into Junktown, you'll probably notice that it's the most interesting place on the map. Don't get used to it. This is where the game gets back to being well designed. Killian can put 3 places on your map, one of which you've probably already discovered, the location of the raiders, but he can also put the Hub and Necropolis on the map for you. Personally, I think this is oddly easy. I feel like there should be some quests to complete in order to get these locations, or at least have quests there to do. There are a bunch of side quests, but they're not very helpful for the main quest. However, that doesn't mean that they aren't valuable. They do what side quests should do. They get you valuable supplies and experience for moving forward. There's also a valuable reward for those who choose to ask around the town. The singer in the scum pit will put the Brotherhood on the map for you if you compliment him on his singing. So we'll assume we do some of the side quests and move along to the next closest location, Necropolis. We're going to skip over the hub because it's more of the same, just more side quests. There are dialogue options in the hub that will point you to Necropolis, but we'll assume we already did that. Moving forward to Necropolis, we can find that they're having similar water troubles to us. This is good for us, however. Once you've gotten through a little dungeon, you can find some junk that you can use to repair their water pump. Guarding the water pump is one of my favorite characters in the game, Harry, the dumb mutant. If you don't pass his speed checks, you get taken to a different super mutant, and from there, you can get the bad ending. However, it's not very hard to get past him. If you pass the repair check, you can fix the water pump and take their water chip. And here's another huge problem with Fallout, and if you've played it, you've probably seen this coming. The timer on the main quest makes no fucking sense whatsoever. Since the water chip is broken, the vault will eventually run out of water. This gives you 150 days to fix it. Now honestly, this is a decently long timer, but it's better to just not have one at all. Of course, that doesn't make any sense, right? If the vault can survive forever without the chip, the story is pointless. That's why you design the story around the player fucking around. Look at Far Cry 3 for example. In Far Cry 3 you need to save your friends and kill the main antagonist, Boss. In order to get to them, you need to help out the Rockette because they have leads on where your friends are, and each friend has a quest line to follow in order to save them. The side quests, if you want to call them that, are the outposts. However, these outposts serve a greater purpose to the story. Pirates will patrol the area around the outposts if they haven't been captured yet, so capturing them makes following the main quest line easier for you, along with the radio towers which will reveal surrounding parts of the map. Both of these play into Jason trying to find his friend. And of course, these are all optional, but they're so good that most players will do almost all of them. This is great game design, making the side content have something to do with the main quest. Of course, on the scale of Fallout, there has to be some sort of unrelated quest, or Fallout just wouldn't be Fallout. But there should be some sort of reason for it, something that relates to the main quest. Maybe you have to escort a caravan to a location that will give you a hint on where to go next. Fallout 2 does something great with this that I'll touch on later. Now back to what I was saying about the timer. If you design the main quest line around the player doing side content, then you don't need to have stupid fucking timers and you can let the player take their time with the game. If you're one of those completionist types, you can actually soft lock the game. If you get the water chip with 1 day left, you won't be able to get back to the vault in time, and you'll just lose. And if you don't have any older saves, it's back to the beginning for you, asshole. Anyways, so we've got the water chip in hand, and now we head back to the vault. Throughout the wasteland, you may have caught glimpses of super mutants around the wasteland. You can even talk to some. Hell, you can even end the game in Necropolis if you talk to one of them and pick the right dialogue options. However, we're going for the canon ending, so we keep moving forward towards the vault. Once we give the Overseer the water chip, he sends us out again, now to stop the growing threat of the mutants. It's never explicitly stated, but this quest also has a timer. Only this one is invisible. If you don't finish the game in time, the vault gets taken over by mutants and you get the bad ending. However, we're going for the canon ending, so off we go back into the wasteland. The only problem is, where do we go? The Overseer doesn't give us any hints. Okay, well, we got the location of the Brotherhood back in Junktown, and we haven't been there yet, so let's go there. A lot of people like to shit on Modern Fallout for quest marking you all over the world, but in times like this, I can see their use. The least they could have done is have the Overseer give us a hint on what to do, because it can be quite frustrating for the player to have to figure this shit out on their own. The Brotherhood doesn't know where the military base is, but they do know the direction of it to the northwest. If you go and explore that direction and find the base, then return to the Brotherhood, they'll send a few people to help you get in. For the mutants, you can pick up some pretty good guns, laser rifles and miniguns. And here's yet another problem that most Fallout games have had thus far. The entire game, up until this point, we've had almost no exposure to big guns or energy weapons. So now, we've got these essentially useless but nonetheless powerful weapons. It's never worth investing into big guns or big energy weapons because we don't even get them until late game, and on top of that, finding ammo for them is pretty hard. They're useful as long as you watch your ammo use, but then again, you probably haven't invested in the skills necessary, because if you did, then getting through the early game becomes significantly harder. What would have made more sense is to have the skill affect damage, not both damage and accuracy. Or give the user access to all types of guns from the beginning so that they can invest in the skills early. Give the user a laser pistol from doing the Rescue Tandy, or a minigun for killing Gizmo. That way players can invest in these skills and have them be immediately valuable. Anyways, so let's assume we have around 100 energy weapon skill just to make things simpler. Here's one of the parts of completing the main story. If you spam science and repair checks and make it through the mutants, which isn't that hard if you have power armor and a laser rifle, you can make it to the 4th floor, where you can blow up the lab. You get a cool little cutscene from this, however, I still have a problem with this. The lab just shouldn't have the force fields. All they do is a bit of damage and require you to spam repair checks. The player doesn't gain anything from this, and furthermore, the user really hasn't had a reason to level up their repair skills, so they're just gonna get frustrated. And we've accomplished nothing with this, just made it more annoying. As well, the computer will require 1,000,000 science checks, which the user hasn't had a reason to invest in. All this just wastes the player's time. It makes sense that the computer would be locked, but this should have been some sort of minigame, not just click science, click computer for an eternity. The cathedral is south of the boneyard, and thus on the south end of the map. There's only one character who will actually put the cathedral on the map for you, a companion named Katya, so the only other way to discover it is to explore the map. Once again, this is bad design. Normally I love exploration, but if you're going to time the player, you can't demand that they explore. New players might be too scared to explore and risk losing all the time they have left. This will result in saving, wandering around aimlessly, finding something that might push the story forward, and then loading back and beelining for that spot. Exploration should be leisurely, fun, and exciting. However, watching a little red dot move along the desert isn't very exciting. I understand why this is. Such an old game didn't have access to the resources that we do these days. Fallout is a bit over 500 megs, which would probably eat up a lot of space on a late 90s hard drive. But this is why you make things easier on the player, by not having them wander around the wasteland. Not only that, if you're a low-level player and you decide you want to travel west, guess what? You die immediately. In Fallout 3, you can go straight to Smith Casey's garage if you want to. In fact, I found my dad completely by accident when I first played Fallout 3. So why wall the player off like that? I understand if you want to save certain locations for higher level players, but the random encounters punish low level players for exploring, the exact thing that the game is demanding of the player. Anyways, let's assume we have Katya with us and move on to the cathedral. In the cathedral you can find the master, and this is honestly the best part of the game. Once you fight your way through it, or get the items to pass through it peacefully, you can be taken to the master. Talking with him is a great climax to the game, but there's still some problems with it. If you haven't gotten proof that the super mutants cannot procreate, which you get from a random doctor from the Brotherhood, then the requirement to talk him down is crazy high. If you don't have the proof, you have to kill him. He has 500 HP, an assortment of miniguns, and a bunch of asshole super mutant cronies who will help him out. If you weren't intimidated by the game timing you, and you were able to collect some decent gear, you can manage this fight, but that's not very likely, is it? You're more likely to try and go with the diplomatic ending. If you have at least 7 intelligence and proof of the super mutant's sterility, then you can convince the master to kill himself. I don't really see why 7 intelligence is required if you already have the proof, but okay. And now you can return to the Overseer, who will thank you and then banish you from the vault, and the game is over. So what have we learned? Do not time the player. Have side quests lead to other story relevant areas. Don't add skill checks that can be spammed until success. Make the steps to success clear for the player to discover on their own. Design around limitations, and make skills immediately useful to the player. I actually really like Fallout 1, and I think all Fallout fans should play it. However, to act like it's a perfect game is folly. Before I move on to Fallout 2, I want to go over some things that really worked with Fallout, since I have been quite negative so far. First of all, as I touched on earlier, Fallout does a good job of introducing the starter town. I really like how Shady Sands is on the way to your first clue. As well, it's nice that Vault 15 doesn't lead you anywhere. It forces the player to keep on moving throughout the world. The story and world building of the game is also really great. The way the mutant army is super mysterious until you find the master and he explains his entire plot to you. The ending slides are also nice, however, some settlements get locked into bad endings if you run the timer too long. So with Fallout down, we'll move on to Fallout 2. As a preface, I'm not going to record any new footage for it, I'm just going to record from my old saves, so the relevance of the clips is going to be a bit worse. I just don't really like Fallout 2, and I'll get into why that is. As well, I won't be going over the story with as much detail, because it's really convoluted and hard to follow. There's a lot of choices to make, and I feel it's not fair to say you need to do X, Y, and Z. So Fallout 2 follows the story of the Chosen One, a descendant of the original Vault Dweller from Fallout, who learns from the village elder that the village of Arroyo is dying. The Chosen One is sent out on a mission to find a GECK, short for Garden of Eden Creation Kit, which is a tool for terraforming a post-apocalyptic environment. However, before setting out on your quest, you must get through the worst area in all of game design. Fuck the Temple of Trials, it's stupid as shit. You can literally avoid all the enemies there if you just run away from them, until you get to the end where you meet another tribesman who tells you that you must defeat him to move forward. So fuck you if you didn't invest in strength. I don't know how the person who proposed this didn't get immediately fired. It's a shitty dungeon that demands fighting in a game that's supposed to be about choices. Not only that, but if you actually do fight the enemies in there, get ready for the most long and painful experience of your life, because you have no combat skills, meaning you're going to miss most of your hits at point blank range. Anyways, so once you make it out of the Temple of Trials, you go off looking for a trader named Vic, who gave the village a Vault 13 canteen, so he can tell you where Vault 13 is. Fallout 1 and 2 are very similar, meaning they share some similar flaws. However, Fallout 2 goes double time on the path to success being unclear and straight up doesn't lead you anywhere. Most of what you have to find is out of sheer luck, and hints on what to do next are really scattered. When you go to Klamath, where Vic is supposed to be, he isn't. The game doesn't tell you where he might be, so you just have to keep asking around until you find the location of another town. When you get to the den, you find out that he is there, but he's hidden behind an in-game paywall. You have to fix Metzger's radio, then pay him $1,000, or $500 if you're a woman with charisma 6 or higher, and sleep with him. Otherwise, you can try and kill Metzger and crew, but good luck with that. Unlike Fallout 1, Fallout 2 doesn't start you off with any gear. All you get is a canteen, a spear, and some money. Once you find your first gun, a pipe rifle, it's absolute garbage, and Metzger and his crew have way better armor and equipment than you, and there's more of them, so you basically have to submit to the payment. This pushes the player to do a bunch of side quests, which are also impossible, to get money just so you can waste it on a guy who might push the story forward. When you finally do free Vic, he tells you where Vault City is, so that's our next stop. On our way to Vault City, we find Montage, which is a pretty useless town. There's not much good loot to buy or find there, so we're gonna skip over it and move along to Vault City. Once you get to Vault City, you can pretty easily get a day pass just for wearing a vault suit. If you talk to the mayor, so to speak, the first citizen, Lynette, she tells you that her vault may contain information on Vault 13, but you're not allowed to access it unless you become a citizen. There are two ways to become a citizen. You can either take the citizenship test, or you can cause a meltdown in the reactor at a nearby settlement, Gecko, killing all the ghouls there. You see, Gecko is leaking radiation into the groundwater, and it's affecting the health of all city citizens. Here, Fallout 2 does something really good. Initially, you might think, wow, the people at Gecko are such inconsiderate assholes. However, when you go to Gecko and ask around, Harold will tell you that they don't want to do it, but they need the power, and they could easily fix the problem with a part that Vault City has. So now you leave Gecko starry-eyed thinking you can resolve this beneficially for all people. However, when you tell Lynette, she tells you that she doesn't want the power plant fixed, she wants it, along with all the ghouls there, gone.
You stupid bitch!
If you insist that it's wrong, you get banned from Vault City. I guess the good design couldn't last too long, eh? But before we cover why this is bad, let's cover why this is good. It really fleshes out the world for you to slowly discover that Lynette is just xenophobic, and also to see the perspective of the folks at Gecko. It shows what problems of Wastelanders typically look like. Why this is bad, however, is because you get banned from Vault City for proposing the most logical solution to the problem, and while I could be wrong about this, I believe you get locked into dialogue that will get you banned either way. However, you can completely go over her head and ask some guy 2 rooms down who will give you the part for nothing. This is what I mean by unclear paths to success. Why would I ever go see this guy? I'm not done with Vault City, because remember when I said you could take the citizenship test to become a citizen? Well, the game presents those as your options, but they aren't really your options. You can't pass the citizenship test. On my last playthrough, I had a high intelligence build, so I figured I was in the clear. Nope, you can't pass no matter what you do. Why would the game even present this as an option if it isn't one? Shouldn't players who bothered to make high intelligence builds be able to pass this? It doesn't make any sense. Anyways, so when we bring the part to Gecko and fix the power plant, we can tell Annette we fixed the problem and she'll let us into the archives. So now we have the location of Vault 15. We know from Fallout 1 that there's nothing there, but maybe it has info on Vault 13? Anyways, it's our only lead, so we'll head there. From there you can find some, frankly, very irrelevant areas, a few side quests that you can do, so whatever, let's assume we did them. Coming to Vault 15, you find something strange. In Fallout 1, the entrance of the vault was in a shack, but now it's in the side of a cliff. Okay, maybe there was a cave-in from a nearby mountain? No, that can't be. This is a pre-war door. Okay, it's weird. Looks like the original creators of Fallout can't keep up with their own lore. Oh well. Anyways, you can get a pretty easy quest to rescue this girl's daughter, so you do that, and from there you get the key into the vault. Immediately upon entering the vault, you are greeted by guards who will interrogate you. This is a classic example of save, enter, try speech check, repeat until success. I made my thoughts on this known in the Fallout 1 part, so we'll move on. Going through Vault 15, you can get the location of Vault 13, so off you go. So, I'd like to go over something I said earlier. At the beginning of the game, Fallout 2 does an absolutely horrible job of telling you what you should do next. However, once you discover the location of Vault City, the game does a fantastic job of telling you what to do next. This right here is excellent game design, and Fallout 2 deserves that credit. Once you get into Vault 13, you find a bunch of Deathclaws. These talking Deathclaws now live in Vault 13. Okay, sure, whatever. And they have a Gek. Great, right? Finally. Only, they want you to do something for them, in exchange for it. What a surprise. But I'm not gonna fault an RPG for having quests. That's what we're here for. You need to fix their computer. Once you inspect the computer and talk to the technician near it, you find out that they need a new voice modulator. Where is this voice modulator? Well, the technician will tell you either Vault City or New Reno. So check in New Reno because it's closer and you can buy one. So back to Vault 13, fix it, take the Gek, and get out of there. On your way back to Arroyo though, there will be Enclave assholes. These motherfuckers are so overpowered, stumbling across them is an instant reset. You basically have to keep trying over and over again until you don't run into them. Once you get to Arroyo, a tribesman will tell you that the villagers have been taken away on giant winged beasts. This was the Enclave kidnapping your tribe. So now we need to go find them. However, the quest isn't updated on your Pip-Boy, so without knowing the story beforehand, how are you supposed to figure out what to do next? Whatever, let's head to our next clue, Navarro. But before we can head to Navarro, I want to talk about the story up until this point. Remember how I complained about Fallout 1 timing you and how horrible it was? Well, Fallout 2 doesn't. I mean, the game has a timer, but it's 13 in-game years, which is pretty hard to run out. But you still get the warnings that you're taking too long. So there's no timer, but the game pretends that there is? This creates the same problem as in Fallout 1, you're pushing the player to finish the main quest too fast. The removal of the actual timer actually makes the game worse, because once you realize it's not real urgency, the main story has no stakes. As I said in the part before this, the story should not be designed around urgency. Even if the urgency isn't enforced by the game, it's still immersion breaking. Anyways, so we head to Navarro, or at least we try. You're likely to get stopped by Enclave patrols. For some reason, these patrols try to kill you on sight. That's never really explained, and unlike the Unity patrols in Fallout 1, these guys are fucking tough. I would usually die before I even got a turn wearing power armor and with endurance 8. Anyways, if you go to Navarro, you can meet a guy named Chris. Without reading anything about him, you just think he's some sketchy guy, probably hiding something, but you don't have any reason to believe he's involved with kidnapping your tribe. However, if you somehow manage to find San Francisco before this, which you probably wouldn't since the game is actively discouraging exploration, you'll probably be directed here anyways with a quest from the Brotherhood. You can pretend to want to join the Enclave, which brings me to another problem that Fallout 3 would later repeat. Why can't I actually join the Enclave? Like, I get that Fallout 2 was released the year right after Fallout was, but you could spend a bit more time on development and try and give us a branching story. Why should I care about the tribe? Even Fallout 1 had the option to join the mutants. You could literally tell the Master that you agree with him and want to join. Anyways, so let's go into the Enclave base, search around, and now what? On my first playthrough of the game, I was convinced this was a story-relevant location. It looks like one, doesn't it? It's more like a place where you can restock and get energy weapons that, once again, the game didn't give you any reason to invest to. I already covered that at length in Fallout 1, so we're just gonna brush past that. Once you get your gear and have somehow figured out that you need to go to San Francisco, you'll find a tanker. If you ask around, you'll find out that this tanker can go places. And if you check the computer, you'll find out that you need to fix it up before it can actually go anywhere. The steps to fix it are so fucking random and out of nowhere, it makes me want to scream. So first, you need to get fuel. There are a couple of ways to get the fuel. You can either A, get hardened power armor from a doctor from a cult. B, rescue a guy called Badger's girlfriend from aliens and floaters in the cargo hold of the ship. C, just take it from the Kung Fu people. D, get it from the guy who's pushing the cult's rhetoric. E, get it from the Brotherhood if you get the Enclave's vertebrate plans and you're stupid enough. F, get it from the cult's leader if you're stupid enough. Okay, I asked for branching stories earlier, but fuck, how does this shit even make sense? Like, how the fuck are you supposed to figure any of this shit out on your own? No one tells you who might have the fuel, you just know that you need it. Anyways, no matter how you get it, now you need to fix the navigation computer, which is missing a part all the fucking way in Vault 13, and requires a part from Navarro. Again, where the fuck are you supposed to figure all this shit out? Anyways, once you figure all this shit out, actually no, I'm not ready to move on. There's one last location I want to talk about. Fuck the cargo hold. Looks like the guy who made the Temple of Trials kept his job and hadn't finished ruining this game, and made the cargo hold. The cargo hold is packed to the brim with bullet sponge enemies, the aliens, and the floaters. And the AI in Fallout 2 does this annoying ass thing where they'll surround you, keeping you from moving. Now, these aren't hard enemies to beat. The problem is there's so many of them. It's like rad roaches. Imagine if you were playing Fallout 3 and had to fight 1,000 rad roaches. You'd probably lose, right? And not only that, these fucking guys have like 1 billion health each. I literally ran out of shotgun shells and I had over 100 when I started. I kept dying because these fights took so long that I'd occasionally get hit for 1 or 2 damage and they whittled me down to nothing. Game difficulty doesn't come from putting 1 million enemies with 3 billion health in one area. It comes from good AI and enemies that make the player question their strategy for defeating them. What I ended up doing was running straight past them to the other end where the computer was, and then just kept loading in and out of the area to fuck with the spawns and waited for the spawn that I could get past without fighting. Anyways, so you finally prepared everything and we can go to the Enclave's base. Again, there's no way you'd actually know that you had to go there without reading a spoiler, but whatever. Get a pretty cutscene and now you're in the Enclave's base. Once here, you find your tribe kidnapped and now your goal is to blow it up. To blow it up, you need to... Are you fucking serious? To blow it up, you need to plant a bomb by one of the computers and then it starts a countdown. Now for the final boss, Frank Horrigan. Despite how unthreatening that name is, he's a fucking tough boss. In order to have any chance of surviving, you need to kill the president and take his keycard off his body. There's literally no other way to get it. Gotta love when an RPG locks you into one way to get something. However, if you do get the keycard, all of the heavily armored, energy weapon wielding guards are going to come for you. So you better hope you can make it out of there in time. With the keycard, you're on your way to having a chance of winning the fight. Right outside of his chamber, you can find some Enclave guards who you can save, try a speech check, load until success into helping you. If you somehow manage to get past Frank, he dies, you leave, and I guess the tribe escapes off camera or something, and you've beaten Fallout 2. Jesus Christ. So what have we learned? Fake timers are worse than real timers. Bullet sponges do not create difficulty, they create frustration. One-dimensional dungeons are boring and antithetical to what an RPG should be about. Overpowered patrols do not create difficulty, they create constant saves. Remember your own lore. A true RPG will allow the player to side with the antagonists. Don't give the player false options, especially not ones that would work with certain builds. Fallout 2 is, in my opinion, not good. If I had to rank it out of 10, it'd probably get somewhere around a 3. That doesn't mean you shouldn't play it though. Maybe you'll get something out of it that I didn't. There is also something else that I didn't mention that pissed me off. If you make a low intelligence build, less than 4, your character doesn't say words. He makes noises, and those are apparently supposed to be dialogue options. Fallout 2 seems to me like that kid in class who was always trying a bit too hard to be funny, and he occasionally had some good ones, but most of the time he was just annoying as fuck to listen to. Anyways, with all that said, there are still some good parts of Fallout 2 to touch on. The way character motivations are established is great. Like I mentioned with the Gecko power plant story, Lynette isn't entirely truthful about what she wants, and that's interesting. I think more Fallout games should do this. In a world like that of Fallout, people are going to lie and be dishonest, and it should be up to the player to sort through the truth by asking around. But that's about all I can give to Fallout 2 because it's mostly just a highlight of the flaws from Fallout 1. Anyways, with that finally out of the way, we can move on to my personal favorite of the series, Fallout 3. Fallout 3 was the first Fallout created by the folks at Bethesda, and by God did they make it count. More than 13 years later, this game still holds up in a way that only New Vegas has been able to replicate. Fallout 3 follows the story of the lone wanderer, born into the world by Liam Neeson with no real goal until about 30 minutes into the game when Mr. Neeson flees the vault before you can get his autograph. So it's up to you to track him down. Before we do that though, let's focus on the overly long tutorial. The game begins with a character creation screen where Liam talks for too long and then Mom dies. After that, you read a book and assign your special stats. I don't like this. The book was a neat idea and it's quite a cute way of building your character. But I didn't realize for years that the special stats affected my skills. I honestly wasn't sure what they did. In fact, I only realized they affected my skills because New Vegas explicitly told me. They could have extended the descriptions in the book to say what they affected, or had a little corner notification. Anyways, after that, we're 10 years old and we get introduced to the inventory system and speech. We talk to various folks at our birthday party and get some items. It also shows how conflict can be resolved without speech. As many a true nerd said in his video, Fallout 3 is better than you think, the first conflict you find yourself in doesn't even give you the option to fight. You can't hit Butch back. This is fantastic, much better than Fallout 2's Temple of Trials bullshit. The fight gets broken up, you get introduced to the gun mechanics in a low stakes environment, and now you're 16. Here, you can get a unique item that is in no way required for completing the game, just a fun collectible to get. You can only get this again much later in the game, which is interesting. Anyways, moving on, you find your friend Amata getting bullied by a gang of bullies. Once again, you can end this diplomatically, and it also introduces you to speech checks. However, I have a problem with the speech checks in Fallout 3. Fallout 3 tells you the percentage you have to pass the check, which doesn't really make any sense to me. Fallout New Vegas would later try to remedy this, but that has its own problems that I'll cover later. Anyways, this part of the tutorial shows you that there's many different solutions to conflict, since you once again convince them to leave her alone or fight them. Then you take the test, pick your tag skills, and now you're 19. The tutorial is now over, and honestly, I don't think it needed to be as long as it was. I think the 1-year-old and 10-year-old parts could have been condensed into one thing, and there could have been less Neeson fan service. But whatever, time to start the game proper. So you have a new quest, Leave the Vault. This quest gives you a ton of options. You can run past everyone, kill everyone in sight, or any combination of that. The way you deal with the Overseer even has an effect on the later game, which is really cool. Once you leave the vault, you have a bunch of signs that lead you to your first town. It's a bit heavy-handed, as I said earlier, and I would have appreciated something like what Fallout 1 had. Maybe Amata knows of a place to start looking, and Megaton is on the way. Anyways, going into Megaton, we talk to Lucas Sims, the sheriff, who tells us Moriarty might have more information we need. Before we go any further, I'm going to lay down some ground rules going forward. All the Fallout games going forward are huge and would take forever to cover if I covered every side quest. So I'm going to pick some that I feel highlighted the good or bad parts of the game. I simply don't have the hard drive space to even hold all that footage. Okay, so first off we're going to do the Wasteland Survival Guide. This is a really good quest line that takes you to a bunch of different parts of the map and fixes something that I complained about earlier. Again, credit goes to Mini a True Nerd, but the Super Duper Mart has laser weapons there so you can start investing in them immediately. This presents them as an option that the player can immediately benefit from. This is how you give the player real choice in what type of build they want to do. Actually, the player has access to all sorts of weapons right from the beginning, melee, small guns, and energy weapons. Unfortunately, there's still no love for big guns, but that gets remedied later. The Wasteland Survival Guide is one of the best quests I've ever seen in any game. It teaches the player immediately how valuable exploration is by leading you all over the map, not too far as to give you room to explore, but just enough to show you that there are interesting things all over the wasteland. It even takes you to story-relevant locations that will be useful later. In fact, the Big Guns remedy is in the part of the quest that takes you to Rivet City. You'll end up facing some super mutants at the entrance of the city, one of which is carrying a minigun. If you kill him, you get his minigun and thus have a reason to invest in big guns. Fallout 3 is so good at encouraging the player to play how they want. It empowers the player instead of making them feel small and like they have to be cautious of everything, even at max level. What I will say, however, is this does break the environment of the game. In my opinion, Fallout should be scarier than this. Fallout 3 might empower the player too much, and I feel like it doesn't do a great job of limiting the player's powers. I feel like exploration should always carry a risk, where the player might actually suffer a loss from exploring. It makes the exploration more of a gamble, and thus more interesting. The only dungeon that really does this is the My Lady of Hope Hospital and the Statesman Hotel, which are part of the Riley's Rangers quest. If you aren't careful in there, you might end up leaving with less than you came in with, which makes survival more difficult. Anyways, let's continue on with the main quest. After talking to Moriarty, he directs you to Galaxy News Radio. This is where we face one of Fallout 3's weaker points, but it's a remedy for something I discussed in Fallout 1. In Fallout 1, the game couldn't render a large environment for you to explore, so you were a little red dot traveling across the desert. In Fallout 3, the game can render a large environment, but only in small chunks. That means that Bethesda wasn't able to put a huge, sprawling downtown area, only small chunks, separated by the metro stations. It's maybe not the most elegant solution, but it's a decent compromise. Anyways, we move along through the metro tunnel. Here we face some feral ghouls. This is a really small quality of life improvement over the classic Fallout, where we know the difference between the ghouls we can talk to and the ones which are enemies. In classic Fallout, they use the same sprites. Anyways, past the metros, we emerge in the GNR Plaza. Here we'll fight some super mutants with the help of the Brotherhood. A lot of classic fans hate the fact that the Brotherhood are in this game at all. I somewhat agree, because despite remembering some mention of the Brotherhood traveling east at the end of one of the classic Fallouts, I wasn't able to find it. It's a bit far-fetched to say that the Brotherhood would be here. However, the Pentagon would probably be a pretty tempting prize for an organization that seeks old world technology, so to an extent, it makes sense. Personally, I wish that Bethesda went with something more original. They could have come up with one of their own factions. Bethesda came up with the Minutemen, the Railroad, and the Institute. They clearly have the ability to contribute to the lore, yet they went with a faction that already existed. Now, onto the armor that they wear. Okay, honestly, it's fine. Like, I just don't care that much. Yeah, old heads, T-51 is cooler. It's a better looking armor, but T-45 keeps with the motif, and it makes perfect sense that the US developed more than one type of power armor. And Bethesda did a great job of integrating it into the lore, so you nerds can relax. They then fucked up the lore, but we'll talk about that when we get to Fallout 4. However, I will say that there should have been some T-51 somewhere in Fallout 3. I mean, the Brotherhood are using the Pentagon as their base. Why would one of the biggest military bases in the US not have the best armor? Why would it have the worst one? It doesn't make any sense to me, and trust me, this is not the first time Bethesda would be careless with the lore. The second thing we need to talk about is the super mutants. First of all, it makes perfect sense that the super mutants are in the east. In case it wasn't perfectly obvious, these aren't the same mutants from California. If you actually read the goddamn lore, you'd see that they're a different strain. Did you expect Fallout to take control of the series and not add anything to the lore? The FEV strain used on the East Coast mutants makes them the way they are. Much more veiny and sickly looking than the mutants of Fallout 1 and 2. The strain is also one that makes them less intelligent, which creates the dialogue we hear from them. I've heard the arguments that this makes mutants like orcs. Okay, sure. Why is that a problem? I'm not going to say that an RPG requires orcs, but is it a problem to have them? A game needs enemies, which is all the mutants were in Fallout 1, so why can't they be enemies in Fallout 3? Oh, I see, because you hate Fallout 3 because the internet told you to. Okay, cool. You know that a lot of the mutants in Fallout 1 were dumb too, right? Fuck's sake. Anyways, we fight past some mutants and get Mutant Behemoth set piece. And to help us, the game gives us a fat man. The behemoths are lore friendly because the EEP, the FEV derivative that Vault 87 uses, never stops the growth of those it mutates. So the behemoths are just older mutants that never died. However, this set piece still sucks. The game gives us a super powerful weapon that really diminishes the threat of what is otherwise a giant bullet sponge. I mean, it's fine, it's over in a few seconds with the Fat Man, but the Fat Man is stupid too. Not because of the little mushroom cloud it makes, it's just too goofy for me. Fallout has always had a pretty dark atmosphere, but things like this just make the world too lighthearted for me. When I'm playing Fallout, I want to be sad as fuck and questioning life and the direction of the world's superpowers, not chucking football-sized nukes at the Hulk. After that, we can go up to see the radio DJ, 3 Dog. Again, Three Dog is a bit too goofy for me, but his performance is still really good. He sends us on a quest to aid in the indescript good fight, that being heading to the Museum of Technology and grabbing a satellite dish from the lunar lander and sticking it up top of the Washington Monument. This features a little dungeon full of mutants to shoot through. This is definitely not the only time you'll use VATS, but it's a good place to talk about it. VATS, in my opinion, is a cool system, and before we talk about it, I really cannot recommend enough Many a True Nerd's video about it. By the way, every source I use in this video will be linked in the description. Anyway, VATS is, as you've probably heard before, Bethesda's solution to converting a turn-based game into a live-action shooter. And it's pretty cool, but it has a lot of problems that would later be fixed. First of all, even for a max level character, Grim Reaper's sprint is way too OP of a perk. It's pretty easy to get kills in VATS at that level, so the game essentially becomes a VATS sim. Along with that, VATS provides 90% damage resistance, so you can clear out a whole camp without popping a single stim pack. This is a really bad implementation of a good system, but thankfully future installments will fix this. But VATS is definitely a negative in Fallout 3. Once we get the dish, we go to the Washington Monument to fix the old one. Here we're exposed to the whole mutant run war zone of DC. This is pretty well done in my opinion. Remember in Fallout 1 when I complained about the West End being completely blocked off by mutants? Well, this is similar, but it's not a problem. That's because of how sneaking works in Fallout 3. You can sneak around the mutants if you're careful, unlike in Fallout 1 where you get stopped by the mutants and you're stuck in combat. It's almost as if Fallout 3 doesn't want the solution to every problem to be shooting. How interesting. Three Dog, in thanks, will direct us to Dr. Lee in Rivet City. Dr. Lee will immediately recognize us and tell us where he's going. Here we can get the Replicated Man quest, which is a quest I really like. This is what all Fallout quests should be. You see, the quest doesn't tell you where to go. All it says is learn more about the escaped android. You have to ask around to people who might know about it, so doctors, engineers, the like. Once you discover that Pinkerton did the deed of erasing his memories and giving him surgery to change his appearance, you can confront Harkness about it and choose his fate. Choosing the good option gets you a crazy good weapon, his plasma rifle, which brings me to another problem, which might be a bit controversial. In my opinion, the morally good option should always yield worse rewards than the bad one. What's the point of being a bad character if it's going to be worse for you? Everyone wants to do the right thing, but if the reward is too useful to the player, they may be more inclined to be evil. If being good is always better for you, what's the point of being bad? It's a small gripe, but I think it would make the game a lot more interesting. While we're on the topic of side quests, there's another one I want to talk about. Those sucks, man. It really does. First of all, the fact that giant ants shoot fire is dumb. Like with the Fat Man, it's too goofy. As well, the entire quest is just a dungeon with one enemy type. You talk to a guy, and then you're done. There's nothing interesting about this dungeon, unlike the Museum of Technology. It's just a metro station. It's boring and uninspired, and I always try to avoid it. So let's move on to the main quest. So we go to the Jefferson Memorial, fight some mutants, and grab some holodiscs. The trail continues. Again, kind of an uninspired dungeon, but it's short, so we figure out that Dad is in Vault 112. Personally, I would have liked if the vault's location was unknown. I think the quest would be more interesting if it required the player to ask around for clues as to where it is. Maybe have them go through Vault-Tec headquarters to find its location. Once we enter the vault, we're directed to the Tranquility Lounger. This is honestly one of the best parts of the whole game. Tranquility Lane is such a fucking good quest that it still astonishes me that people can hate this game. First of all, Tranquility Lane can be solved a million ways. Each objective has at least 3 ways to complete it, and if you ask around, an old lady will approach you and tell you about the failsafe, which you can use to end the simulation, if you can figure out the puzzle in it. Puzzle honestly isn't that complicated, it just takes a lot of trial and error. If you want to go the way of following the doctor's orders, you must 1. Make this little bitch kid Timmy cry. 2. Break up the marriage of 2 of the residents, the Rockwells. 3. Kill Mrs. Henderson. 4. Kill everyone as the pint-sized slasher. Each of these has a bunch of ways that they can be completed, except for the last one. I'm not going to go over all the different options, but you can check the wiki page if you're curious. Once you either finish all of the doctor's tasks or initiate the Chinese invasion simulation using the failsafe, you can talk to Betty and get out of there, freeing your dad in the process. Once out of the lounger, you can talk to your dad, who will tell you to go with him to Dr. Lee at Rivet City. The scientists then go to the memorial, you clear out some mutants, help them out, and the fucking Enclave? Jesus Christ. Remember what I said about the Brotherhood kinda not making sense in Fallout 3? Well, the Enclave makes absolutely zero sense. The Enclave got destroyed in Fallout 2. Whatever remnants exist of them would have no reason to go to the east. They'd be much better off just dispersing and becoming regular wasteland citizens. And what's worse is their armor. Why the fuck wouldn't they have their bird outfits? What the fuck is this? Why in God's name would they not leave with their best armor after having their base destroyed and losing most of it? Wouldn't they hang on to it for dear life? You know, whatever. Fuck it. The Enclave shouldn't be in this fucking game, and it's stupid that they are. But they are, and Colonel Autumn tries to take control of the Purifier. Dad nukes the Purifier and kills, like, no one but himself. Autumn looks like he dies, but he doesn't. Wait a fucking minute. Isn't power armor supposed to, like, be resistant to radiation? Fuck's sake, really? The Enclave soldiers in full power armor died. Okay, whatever. Fuck this entire part. Anyways, so let's flee with the rest of the scientists. After clearing out some ghouls and some Enclave, turns out Garza's heart is on the fritz. We can either let him die or donate medical supplies to him. I think this is interesting. Garza is completely fucking useless. In fact, he's kind of a dick. However, helping him would be the good thing to do. So you can either help him and lose some medical supplies, or let him die but feel like a dick. This is what I was saying earlier about the good option being costly. This is an interesting question to ask the player. Will you help the guy who can't help you just because it's the right thing to do? Whichever option you choose, you move on and go see the Brotherhood. You get led into the Citadel, and here's something else I want to touch on. The Brotherhood in Fallout 3 are fine. Wait, didn't we already go over this? No, we didn't. I mean the way they act. In Fallout 1, they send you off to the Glow to get something there. The Glow is highly irradiated, and they don't expect you to make it back. However, if you do, you become an initiate, and you get access to their shit. Let's compare that to how you get entrance to their base in Fallout 3. You're 1. With someone they've worked with before. 2. Just survived an onslaught of Enclave, their enemy, and ghouls. 3. Helped them defeat a behemoth and helped one of their outposts, GNR. No, but you're right, it makes no sense that they'd let you in. How uncharacteristic. They should have sent the player to an irradiated vault to get a fucking Tim Kaine dildo so we can just have Fallout 1 forever, since that seems to be what many old heads want. In short, Fallout 3 is acting exactly how they always have. In fact, they're much better than they were in Fallout 2, where they just have you go get some plans, which is not actually that hard if you get good RNG. Anyways, if you follow the obligatory quest marker, this other asshole will tell you that you need to get the Gek from Vault 87. The only way into the vault without dying of radiation is through Little Lamplight, because one of the missiles hit Vault 87 directly. Unlike Fallout 1, Fallout 3 treats radiation properly and doesn't allow you to go wandering around nuclear strike sites unprotected. Hell, Fallout 3 doesn't even let you go with protection. Maybe this is not the best way to handle it, but I believe the developers wanted the player to go into Little Lamplight. What's cool about Little Lamplight is that right when you get in, you can get an unmarked quest that leads you to a settlement with another quest. While I don't think this should be done for every settlement, it's cool to have things like this here and there. Moving past all that, we get another entrance to the vault. Okay, I gotta level with you. Fallout 3 has this problem a lot and we can't keep ignoring it. Fallout 3 and its one-dimensional dungeons. So many dungeons just have one enemy type and they're just recycled assets from another area. I really hate this, especially since they have all sorts of enemies they could have used in this area. What if half the vault had Enclave here already looking for the Gek? Or a group of raiders who want into the vault and will help you get in only to turn on you after the mutants are out. Or hell, even some ghouls living alongside the mutants, since mutants don't attack ghouls. Whatever, there's something pretty cool in this area anyways. If you look through the different rooms in the vault, there are failed FEV experiments, which I think is pretty neat. I'm not much of a terminal guy, but if I'm not mistaken there are some terminals you can look at to find out more about what happened in the vault. Eventually, you'll find Fox, one of the few intelligent mutants of Fallout 3. I really wish Fallout 3 had more of these, but there's only two, Fox and Uncle Leo, and Uncle Leo can be found by a random encounter. In all my years of playing Fallout 3, I've never actually gotten him. I've gotten the Fire Lance 3 or 4 times, but never Uncle Leo. It's weird. Anyways, if you release Fox, he'll get the Gek for you, because the room it's in is too irradiated for the player to survive. What's cool is that this is not entirely true. The player can get the Gek by themselves, it's just really hard, and nearly impossible if I'm being honest. However, it's how speedrunners get it, and there's an animation for it, and it has a model. It's not like Fox walks to a trigger then walks back. I think it's a pretty nice touch for something most players will never see. So if you have a high enough science skill, you can just release Fox. Otherwise, there's some more mutants to fight. Once you fight through some more mutants, he'll get you the Gek, and you can bring the Gek back to the Brotherhood. Only, oh no, the Enclave used their Deus Ex Machina to knock you out. I mean, it's a set piece, and for some reason people really have a problem with set pieces, but I thought it was pretty cool the first time I saw it. You awaken Colonel Autumn's lair, where he interrogates you for the code to the purifier. When I first played the game, I gave him the code that immediately died. I thought I did something wrong, so I tried again, and tried to get my loot before he could kill me, but I still died. I tried giving him a fake code and still died. There's only one way to get out of this, and it's by telling Colonel Autumn to go fuck himself. I both love and hate this part. First of all, no RPG ever should limit your progression to just one option. Like, why give the player options if they're just going to kill you and you have to try again? All the options should work and have different consequences. But if you're gonna limit the player to one option, I think it's cool that it's the option you least expect. Anyways, if you tell him to go fuck himself, the president calls him away and tells patrolling soldiers to let you through. Halfway through, though, Colonel Autumn tells them to kill you, so more fighting in a 1D dungeon. Whoopee. Once you get to the president's office, turns out he's a computer. I thought this twist was pretty cool. I never expected it, and my little 10-year-old mind was blown. The president wants you to put a modified strain of FEV in the water, which, while harmless to humans, will kill all mutants and ghouls. This is a great question to ask the player. Is it right to decide who should live and who should die? I mean, it's pretty obvious that the mutants are a destructive force in the wasteland, but they can also be peaceful. Just look at Fox or Marcus from the earlier Fallouts. Mutants can be a positive influence on the wasteland. The ghouls are a different issue. Ghouls are typically peaceful, but feral ghouls aren't. If you killed all the ghouls, you'd be killing the friendly ghouls in Underworld, and if the water spread out throughout the country, the ones at Necropolis. Every ghoul you ever met up until this point, friendly or not, would die. Is it worth killing them to kill the mutants, which would ultimately be good for humanity? This is a very interesting problem, and something I really appreciate about this game. Now, taking a break from the main quest, there's a cool little side quest you can get 14 days after the Waters of Light, the quest where Dad dies, Trouble on the Home Front. This is a really cool quest, with cool effects. You get a distress signal from Amada, your childhood friend, telling you to return to the vault because shit's gone sideways. Return to the vault, and she was indeed right. The tunnel snakes are fighting with security, everyone is mad at the Overseer, and there's still roaches all over the place. When you find Amada, she'll explain the situation, that the vault believes that they should be communicating with the outside world. However, the Overseer, who will either be Amada's dad or someone else depending on who you killed when you originally left, will disagree, saying that the door staying closed is the only way to ensure the vault's safety. This is also the only other time you can get the collectible I mentioned earlier, the medicine bobblehead. This quest also asks the player an interesting question: should the residents communicate with the outside world? It could mean a violent death for the residents of the vault if they aren't prepared for an attack. However, if they don't communicate with the rest of the world, they risk low genetic diversity and inevitable extinction through inbreeding. The fate of the vault rests in the player's hands. The player can either completely ignore the quest, convince Amada that the door should remain closed, or if the player decides that the door should be open, they can kill the Overseer or convince them to step down, making Amada the Overseer, and she will then open the vault. There's also a third option, and I didn't even know about it until I started researching this video. You can also hack the computer in the vault, destroy the water chip, which will kill all the residents of the vault. What's cool about this quest is that if you open the vault, you can see certain residents pop up around the wasteland. This is a reward for players who take their time with the game and don't rush through the main quest, unlike Fallout 1, which punishes the player. So, with the Enclave base more or less destroyed, we head back to the Brotherhood, who is preparing an assault on Project Purity to regain control. This part is fucking stupid, man. We follow the giant robot, Liberty Prime, as he slowly walks all the way from the Citadel to the Memorial, and fuck does he walk slow. While his lines are actually pretty funny, the whole thing is way too action movie. If it were up to me, I would have just removed the whole Liberty Prime part and just gone with the Brotherhood attacking the Enclave. Once we get there, someone has to go in and activate the controller, killing whoever goes in. You can convince Sarah to do it, who gets her dumbass killed before she can even activate it. If you have a companion who is immune to radiation, you can also get them to do it, but only if you have the Broken Steel DLC. Either way, if you don't have Broken Steel, you fix the purifier and then die. We're not going to go over Broken Steel, but it sucks in case you were wondering. So what have we learned? Introduce the main game mechanics in a low pressure environment. Don't give the player a goal that they have no reason to care about. Don't make the story a battle of good and bad. Make it a choice of which ideology they agree with. Give quests multiple endings and multiple ways to complete them. Ask the player interesting moral questions along the way. The main storyline should allow for the player to fuck around. There are some things I want to cover about Fallout 3 before I go ahead on to New Vegas. Fallout 3 was the first game to curse us with the very distant future. In my opinion, an apocalypse is best served hot, so to speak. Fallout 1 took place only 80 years after the war, which is really cool. It makes the world more grim, and even more so, more believable. Every Fallout game, except for Fallout 76 after Fallout 3, put us way too far in the future. Why don't they let us see the immediate effects of the war? Even 30 years after the war would have been cool, because there would already be settlements and factions already established. In Fallout New Vegas, if you talk to Raul, he'll tell you about his life immediately after the war. It's a really cool story to hear, and if you haven't heard it, you really should look into it. But why don't we ever get to live that? Also, Fallout 3 has way too much of a fight of good and evil, as I said in the what have we learned part. The game would be much better as a fight for sustainability, like Fallout New Vegas is. And speaking of the story, Fallout 3's main story is kinda silly, at least for the first part. Like, okay, Dad leaves the vault. You've definitely heard this before, but why should I care about my dad? He only had like an hour of screen time. On top of that, if my character does care about their dad, why is the game then encouraging me to explore the world? The game would have massively benefited from a story more like Fallout New Vegas's, where the main story's progress makes perfect sense to be delayed. You also may have noticed in the gameplay that I have a UI mod. That's because, quite frankly, Fallout 3's UI is horrible, and classic Fallout had a much cooler UI. It's a small gripe, but I think that Fallout should try and stick to its roots. And that sums up Fallout 3, and we're about halfway done with our journey through the world of Fallout. So buckle up and get ready for what most people consider the best Fallout game, Fallout New Vegas. Fallout New Vegas was handed off to the devs at Obsidian Entertainment, which to my knowledge was made up of former Interplay and then Black Isle devs. The same people who went on to make The Outer Worlds. The game begins with a very good looking, especially for the time, cutscene in which you are in a graveyard with 3 men. The one in the middle takes out his bougie gun and shoots you in the head after robbing you of the package that you were meant to deliver, being a courier. This has to be one of the best Fallout openings ever. Fallout so far has always given you too much information on your character. In Fallout 1, you have to be a Vault 13 citizen. That's where you're from, and that's all there is to it. In Fallout 2, you have to be a citizen of Arroyo and a descendant of the Vault Dweller from Fallout 1. In Fallout 3, you're a citizen of Vault 101, Liam Neeson is also your father, you're always 19, you're always friends with Amada. Fallout 3 really did it the worst if I'm being honest. This is unfortunately the only Fallout game that gives you such a blank canvas to really roleplay. The only thing you know about yourself in Fallout New Vegas is that you're a courier and that you're an adult, and even that isn't certain. You could be a teenager if you want to. Unlike Fallout 1 and 2 though, they removed the option to pick your age, which I would really like to see make a return. Anyways, we awaken the home of a doctor, here we make our character, pick our skills, yada yada. New Vegas makes the character creation short and sweet, which is really good. Another great thing is placing laser pistols directly in Doc Mitchell's house, so you can get started speccing energy weapons if you want, like Fallout 3 did. He directs you to the tutorial, but it's optional, which is also good. Honestly, this entire starting section is just perfect. It ticks all the boxes for a great starter town. Side quests, information on the main quest, and NPCs who will give you exposition on the conflict that the game revolves around. When we leave Doc Mitchell's house, we're given a prompt for hardcore mode, and I make no exaggeration at all when I say this is my favorite thing in any Fallout game ever. For reference, my favorite villain in any game is the Master from Fallout 1, and I like hardcore mode better. This is what I've always wanted, hell, since I realized that I need to eat, sleep, and drink water regularly in real life. Well, no, that isn't entirely true. In fact, when I first saw this prompt, I thought, who the fuck would want this? Motherfucker, I want that. Unfortunately, the implementation isn't the greatest, but it's still better than what Fallout 4 did. You see, in order to check your water, food, and sleep, you have to check your Pip-Boy. You'll see later on in the gameplay that I have mods to fix this. The reason that it's not everywhere, as if anyone actually gives a fuck, is because I had problems accessing my Nexus account. Anyways, give me a moment to explain why this is dope. First of all, there's the realism aspect. I know that realism in a game like Fallout isn't a super strong argument, but personally, it's something I like to see. It's part of the reason I wish the player character didn't light jog everywhere. Like, you could walk everywhere if you wanted to, but walking in Fallout is so painfully fucking slow. I mean, Far Cry did it, you can do it too, Bethesda. Anyways, there are more reasons I like this. Stimpaks don't instantly heal you, it takes time. This makes combat a lot trickier and requires more planning, because you're not going to be able to freeze time and instantly get all your health back. Same thing with Radaway. For food, it makes it more than just another healing item. Some items become more valuable because they can ward off dehydration or starvation. Personally, I wish I could tweak the rates at which these drain. In real life, 3 days without water will kill you, but in New Vegas you could just down one of those Naya mini bottles and you're set for like a day. I also wish that dehydration will make you move slower or decrease max HP or max AP, or increased damage taken, and sleep deprivation can make the player's vision increasingly blurry, along with slower speed and slower movement, such as unholstering, aiming down sights, and reloading. If you like hardcore mode, and you are playing on PC, I highly recommend the mod Project Nevada. It makes all the meters drain faster, which makes the whole survival aspect a lot more interesting. Before we carry on with the main quest, we're going to talk about one of the side quests you can get right here in Good Springs. When you walk into the saloon, which you're bound to do, you're going to see Trudy, the bartender, arguing with a dude called Joe Cobb. Joe Cobb is a member of the Powder Gangers, a gang of escaped convicts who use dynamite as one of their main weapons. They want to take control of the town and are prepared to use violence to take it. If you ask the bartender or Joe Cobb more about it, they'll tell you about the conflict. Here, you can choose to join sides with one or the other. This is great because the game is showing you that they aren't going to hold your hand and force you down one path, and it really doesn't matter. That's why the game has 4 endings. You don't really get much no matter which side you choose, but you do get introduced to the new improved karma system. Rather than having everyone like you or everyone hate you, different towns will have different opinions on you. And what's really nice is that no matter which side you pick, you'll always piss off their opposition, so there's always consequences to your choices. So let's assume we do the tutorial, and now we're back at the saloon. Talk to Sunny Smiles, and she has some useful information that will get you on your way. We head down to Prim, and what do you know, it's full of mines. The NCR has some sort of control over this area, but not much. If you talk to the people who actually run this quote-unquote town, you'll find out that Deputy Beagle has been kidnapped by the Powder Gangers. So, if you go in and save him, you can get some more information. There's really not much to say about this part. He's in a small dungeon which has decent design. I more have an issue with the town of Prim. Prim, along with many other towns in this game, are throwaway quest markers, and a lot of them don't have much substance. Look at Prim for instance. Sure, there's a story going on there, but there's not many people to talk to or much to do. How many times did you go to Prim after the first time you visited it? Probably only went back to get Eddie, right? Not to say that the same thing wasn't in Fallout 3, I never went back to Great Itch or Arafu after their associated quests. The thing is, those are side quests. These are main quests. This is where the game is telling you to go. I feel like there should be a bit more to these areas, you know? You often hear the argument that Fallout 3 has the vastness of an ocean and the depth of a puddle, but I don't really see how this argument holds up when each of the main quest locations has an abundance of backstory. Look at Little Lamplight, for example. It's a town run by kids because a bunch of kids went on a field trip to the caverns when the bombs dropped, and they felt that they were best governing themselves and kept up the tradition for hundreds of years. Meanwhile, what is there to say about Prim? Even the wiki pages are pretty bare. Anyways, our good friend Deputy Beagle will lead us to the town of Novak. On the way to Novak, you're going to pass by Nipton. In Nipton, Sasuke... No, I'm serious. It's Yuri Lowenthal, Sasuke's voice actor from Naruto. He also voices a player character whenever they take damage or do a melee attack. Anyways, he tells us about the lottery, but doesn't give us many details. If you talk to the Wolfman, he'll tell you that he's with the Legion, and they ran a town lottery, the winner being allowed to live. The rest suffered various fates, such as Boxcars, who was crippled. While this is a pretty cool story, this town still doesn't have much to it. Once you've experienced the story there's nothing left to do, no quests, not many NPCs to talk to, just nothing. If you go up the road from Nipton, you'll get to the Mojave Outpost. The Mojave Outpost really isn't that bad. There are some quests and some interesting stories to hear. You can get a really cool companion here, Cass. What's great about the companions in Fallout New Vegas is that, aside from Eddie, they all have really cool backstories and quest lines associated with them. Most of these quest lines are actually some of my favorites in the game. However, unfortunately, if you take the peaceful option with Cass's quest line, she insta dies at the end of it. I think this is pretty cool because it continues to make your choices have consequences. But let's continue along the main quest. Once we get to Novak, we get one of those optional but not really quests like Fallout 3 had with Little Lamplight. If you don't pass the speech check to get into the city, you have to go rescue kids from Paradise Falls. In Fallout New Vegas, you have to go get the ghouls out of the Repcon test site. This quest isn't bad at all, in fact it's quite good. The Repcon site is actually pretty creepy thanks to the low light and the ghouls hanging around some corners, but not all. Sometimes you'll hear them howling off in the distance, keeping you on your toes. This right here is an excellent dungeon, which is something New Vegas is packed full of fucking great dungeons. The dialogue with the head Nightkin Davison is actually pretty funny too, with him talking to Antler, the Brahmin skull who he's convinced is telling him what to do. Once you get the Nightkin out of the basement, which, keeping true with the design philosophy, can be done with or without violence, the Bright followers can continue to work on the rockets. Once the rockets are prepped to go, they can blast off, which is a really cool visual. And Chris, the poor human who thought he was a ghoul, and apparently hasn't seen a mirror in like 20 years, is distraught because he wasn't brought along. Once you finish this quest, you're told that Benny went off to Boulder City. Boulder City is an exceptionally boring city because there's literally one conflict there that can be easily resolved, and then you go and probably never go back. Jessup is there, one of the cons who tried to kill you, and he tells you that Benny went to Vegas. I know, I didn't see it coming either. On the way to New Vegas, let's take a look at the sights. There doesn't seem to be much to see, does there? It seems that Fallout hasn't yet been able to rid themselves of the empty landscapes with nothing cool to see or explore. Fallout 3 had the same problem, but like I said, Fallout 3 hides its more boring areas behind optional exploration. I mean, there's some, but not as much as New Vegas. New Vegas has way too many boring desert areas. Deserts are literally the most boring thing that could exist, so you need to populate that area with something. Now you may be thinking, hey, if I know Benny is north of Good Springs, why don't I just head north right at the beginning of the game? Because Fallout New Vegas does literally the worst thing it can when it comes to player freedom. The area is packed full of Cazadors and Deathclaws, which are near impossible for a low-level character. You really don't need to wall the player off like this. The credit check at the strip gate does it well enough. Speaking of the strip gate, here we are. Oh, wait, no. This is Freeside. What's cool about Freeside is that you'll randomly hear gunshots for atmosphere. At least I think it's for atmosphere. They just sound like any other gunshot, so honestly, I don't know if I'm just insanely lucky and have never gotten hit by one of these Freeside gunmen, or they were added for effect. Anyways, in the latter case, it reminds me of the gunshots and the ambient sounds of New Reno and from Fallout 2. It sets the atmosphere of Freeside being a dangerous place. Here, you'll find all sorts of fun quests. I first headed to the Atomic Wrangler because gambling is great in Fallout New Vegas. Unfortunately, it's affected by luck, and I always make luck 1 builds. Still though, the casino games are fun. I've only ever played Blackjack and Roulette because those are the only 2 casino games I know that this game has, but I really would have appreciated a Texas Hold'em table. They could have put that instead of Caravan, a game only the bravest of souls have ever tried to play. Anyways, let's move on to the strip gate. Here, there are some robots, similar to Victor, who are blocking the way. They gun down a guy trying to get into the strip. This would have been a great show-don't-tell moment if it weren't for the fact that throwaway character extraordinaire tells you immediately after not to walk to the gate without talking to the greeter. Anyways, if you talk to the greeter, he tells you you need 2,000 caps to get onto the strip. If you don't have it yet, that's no problem because Freeside has tons of quests that you can do to get there. I like this because instead of making the character backtrack to all different locations in search of something that will push the story forward, they put it right there where you already are, and in doing so, build the story of Freeside. Doing the King's questline can either get you 1,000 caps if you already have the first 1,000, or a strip passport. Not to mention, it builds the story of the tension between the NCR and the Freeside locals. You'll also be sent to the followers who've made their return from Fallout 1. They have a recruitable companion, but we're not taking him. That's because I'm going to go through the Legion's questline. I think it's the road less traveled. I know I've never done it, so I'm going to give you guys the skinny on it. But we'll get to that. Once you've got the caps, you can head on to the strip. The strip has a really cool introduction with cheerful music and a greeting from Victor. Victor will tell you that Mr. House, who up till now we haven't met or know anything about, wants to see you. Skipping right past that invitation, we make our way to the Tops Casino where Benny, says,
What in the goddamn?
And some weird stuff about babies, and is shocked to find that we're still alive. If you don't pass a skill check from a variety of skill checks, you'll have to go up to the presidential suite and wait for Benny, who never comes. And since you don't have any guns, because security takes them when you come into the casino, you're kinda screwed when the guards show up. But you're not stupid, you search the room for a gun, and indeed, there's a 10mm SMG chilling in the safe. This is fantastic game design, letting the player solve their own problems if they're forward-thinking enough. When the bodyguards come, if you have a couple of companions with you, this isn't so bad. You can probably take them down, and you'll discover that Benny is left. Now, here's another brilliant piece of game design. When you walk into the casino, the guard tells you that if you find any weapons, you shouldn't wear them openly. So if the player isn't paying attention and keeps the gun equipped when they leave the suite, they'll aggro the guards. The game will then tell you to check Benny's room. Kinda hand-holdy, but sure, okay. So we check his room and we find Yes Man, a poorly written character with great dialogue. What do I mean by that? Well, it's kind of very convenient that Benny never programmed him not to give out this information to just anybody. It's even more very convenient that we're the first person who isn't Benny who's asked him these questions. I mean, even fucking raiders have the foresight to lock their information on terminals that need to be hacked, but Benny didn't? I mean, I get it, Benny's not some criminal mastermind, but he's also not a fucking idiot. Anyways, Yes Man will tell us about Benny's master plan to take over New Vegas for himself, which immediately starts the questline to control New Vegas for yourself. When you leave the casino, the Wolfman is now wearing a suit, and he gives you the Mark of Caesar, or Kaiser, or whatever, which pardons you against all crimes against the Legion. The NCR will also forgive you, but we don't care about them. Heading over to Caesar's base, the fort, you'll see that they've captured your old pal Benny, and this is just wonderful. Honestly, this is a great reward for the player. Once you've done a job for Kaiser, or Caesar, Caesar, which is destroying the power generators to a bunker full of robots, Mr. House will be very angry with you, and you get to decide how Benny dies. Personally, I like the option where you fight in the arena, to the death, but there are a bunch of ways you could kill him. Next, Caesar demands the blood of Mr. House. Going to the strip into the Lucky 38, you'll find that the Securitrons are very upset with you for disobeying Mr. House. However, if inside the bunker you tell Mr. House that you're going to disobey him, he warns you, so this gives the player time to prepare for whatever is going to happen. And here's where you encounter one of many bugs in this game. If you go up to the penthouse, all your companions will be forever lost to the void. The only way I was able to get them back was by using a terminal in the Lucky 38 to dismiss my companions, then go to retrieve them, and I think the terminal came from a mod. It's pretty stupid that this was left in. I understand that Obsidian didn't have a lot of time to develop and thus debug the game, but there's no way the QA team didn't find this. I worked in game QA and I found a lot more obscure shit than this. They should have prioritized removing all bugs that fucked with the main quest, and the fact that this is still in the game after 10 years? It's ridiculous. We live in an age of constant updates and bug fixes. This is inexcusable. Anyways, once we fight past all the Securitrons, we can take the elevator down to where Mr. House actually is. All we have to do is open up his little pod and shoot him, and he's dead. Pleased with our work, Caesar sends us out on another quest to make friends with the Boomers and have them help us in the upcoming fight for Hoover Dam. Much like real-life Boomers, they hate anything they aren't used to, including people not born as a Boomer, so all outsiders. I really think the writers at Obsidian were ahead of their time with this one. Before we talk about the Boomers, this quest made me think about something that I have trouble nailing down as positive or negative. In many a True Nerds video, Fallout 3 is better than you think, he mentions this as well. Fallout New Vegas' main quest leads you all over the map, exploring different locations, whereas Fallout 3 does not. Honestly, I see both design philosophies working. Fallout 3 doesn't lead you everywhere so that the player can choose to explore and get more out of their game. Fallout New Vegas, on the other hand, designed their main quest around exploration. You'll find a ton of locations completely irrelevant to the main quest, so you might say, oh, what's in here, and look into that location. I honestly can't say that one is better than the other because they both have their merit. I guess it's worth mentioning that as a stupid kid, I didn't really explore when I played Fallout 3. I kinda just followed the main quest. After I played Fallout New Vegas and then went back to 3, I started exploring more, so for that reason I have to give the slight edge to Fallout New Vegas' approach. However, either method would be more than welcome. Also, as a quick side note, I mentioned in the Fallout 3 part that I would talk about New Vegas' speech checks. I plan to go into that in a lot more detail later, but for now, I just want to say Fallout 3 did it better. Do you know what having a minimum requirement does to speech checks? Has people come back and try again later. I waited for forever to talk to Cass about giving up her caravan to Crimson Caravans because I just waited to have high enough speech. I find that minimum requirements are just not a good way of doing things because it removes a huge part of RPGs, luck. I used to play Dungeons & Dragons, and luck is a huge part in that game. If you don't know how Dungeons & Dragons works, basically, if you need to convince someone of something, you roll a 20-sided die and add your charisma modifier, which will be anywhere from -5 to +5 based on your charisma. If it's above a certain number, determined by the dungeon master, the guy who reads the story to you, then it will pass. If not, then it will fail. Now, imagine you're playing Dungeons & Dragons and your DM tells you that instead of rolling a d20, you need a charisma modifier of +3 or higher to pass. You'll probably go off looking for a way to make your charisma modifier higher, right? Or beg your DM to use a Deus Ex Machina. A lot of games, especially competitive ones, don't do RNG right, but RPGs are built for it, so why take it away? Alright, so now, let's head off and see the Boomers. Heading up the road to see them, we see a dude. He tells us that the Boomers are going to kill us if we go straight to them, so we need to either take our chances or take his bet. He bets that we won't make it back, which is a bet you'll always win, so there's literally no reason not to take it. Even if this were real life, there'd be literally no reason not to take the bet. You either die or double your money. I don't really see why Obsidian would just throw free caps at the player like this, but alright. Then we get to the Boomers. We're taken to the leader of the Boomers, an old lady. Honestly, I love this metaphor. And she tells us that she needs help. The boomers have an assortment of side quests, and once you've done enough of them, they like you. The side quests somewhat vary in quality. They range from meh to alright. None of them are particularly spectacular. There's one where you have to clear out ants in this generator room thing. It's a pretty cool quest because you basically have to pick the lesser of two evils. If you use energy weapons, the ants will explode because they've eaten gunpowder, and these explosions will damage you. However, if you use traditional ammo, they won't explode, but if you hit an artillery shell, it will explode and likely kill you. I love how even in such an insignificant, small quest, they still found a way to make it interesting by having the player make a choice in what they feel they can deal with better. It's also worth noting that, if the player decides to go with energy weapons, energy weapon ammo is harder to find, so they'll have to deal with that later. The other quests are kind of sleeper. There's one where you just go back and forth to Crimson Caravans and talk to people, and one where you attempt to heal people with limited medical knowledge. I do appreciate how even if you lack the medical skill, you can still try, but again, I think that your medical skill should modify an RNG roll. Once you've done a few of these quests for the boomers, Mother Pearl, the old lady, will tell you to ask Loyal, another double boomer, about this bomber that they want to lift from the ocean. Once it's lifted and you return, the boomers will agree to help you in the battle against the NCR. Returning to Caesar, he'll give you yet another task, this time to get the White Glove Society to help you, which is impossible. I couldn't figure out how to even complete the objective. I talked to Mortimer about Caesar's offer and it didn't even mark the objective as complete. I have a real problem with this. The White Gloves, in case you didn't know, are cannibals. They eat and serve people. What would have been really cool is a quest to help them, say, find new employees or something, and it turns out that you were getting them people to eat, which would have only been revealed at the end. I mean, Fallout 3 did this. Isn't New Vegas supposed to be the really good one and Fallout 3 the shit one? Sorry, a few days before writing this, I watched the H-Bomber guy video about Fallout New Vegas and I'm still mad about it. Anyways, in Fallout 3, when you get to Tenpenny Tower for the first time, you'll see a ghoul named Roy trying to get into the tower. He'll be denied because he's a ghoul. If the player decides that they want to help the ghouls, they can, in various ways, get them in. However, if the player visits the tower after letting the ghouls in, they'll see that the residents have all been killed and the tower is overrun with feral and non-feral ghouls. This is a quest that most players can just ignore in Fallout 3. Fallout New Vegas, a main quest has less depth. I know you can get a quest for them, but it isn't required, and as a new player, you have no real reason to think that the White Gloves would be interesting. Now, before I go any further, I feel like I need to say this. Fallout New Vegas is, in most ways, better than Fallout 3. Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 3 are both great games in my opinion. You're allowed to like both of them. You don't have to hate Fallout 3 just because H-Bomber Guy or Mr. Caption told you to. And if you truly hate Fallout 3, you have your reasoning and that's fine. But I can't stand seeing all these reviews of Fallout New Vegas that are just crying and complaining about Fallout 3 for an hour and a half when both games make the same mistakes as each other. No game is perfect. Fallout New Vegas isn't perfect. No Fallout game is. Hell, half the Fallout games aren't even good. It's gotten to the point where I can't even watch video essays about Fallout anymore because most of the shit they say is just wrong. Okay, I'm glad I got that out of my system. Anyways, we're done with the White Gloves. They won't join us, whatever. Caesar will yell at us and tell us to destroy the Brotherhood bunker. If you have Veronica with you, she'll be able to get you in. I don't really know what happens otherwise because I had Veronica with me. What's kinda dumb is that there's 2 bunkers in Hidden Valley, and I always go to the wrong one first. Why even have 2 bunkers if only one is relevant? It'd be like if a building had 6 doors that all led to the same place. Oh wait. Anyways, here we can get some okay quests. They're not spectacular, in fact most of them are fetch quests. But they're still pretty fun, and lead you to some interesting places. Whether or not you do them is irrelevant, but I really don't understand this. Why the hell would Caesar want the help of the fucking White Gloves, but then just say fuck the Brotherhood? The Brotherhood are at war with the NCR, and are desperate enough for protection against them. Their advanced technology would give them a huge upper hand against the NCR, so Caesar's decision makes literally 0 sense. Anyways, whatever, if you steal 3 keycards off various Brotherhood members, you can unlock the terminal that will generate a password for the terminal that destroys the bunker. Because I guess bunkers just come with a handy-dandy unsecured self-destruct computer? Like, okay, even if a bunker had a self-destruct computer, why the fuck wouldn't it be behind like 10 guards and 30 magnetically sealed doors with trap floors and rigged shotguns? Also, why the fuck would you have a self-destruct terminal in the first place? In case you haven't noticed, your house didn't come with a blow-up house button. I can't really see a use for the self-destruct terminal. Like, absolute worst case, you can wipe any sensitive information or encrypt it or something. Lastly, there are like 4 available keycards on different Brotherhood members. Which ones are the right ones? How would you know? Take a guess, jackass. Now, it's true that any fool can condemn, criticize, and complain, so here's the solution I'm offering. The Elder literally asks you, in the Brotherhood questline, to fix their air filter. You could just break it completely, which would kill everyone inside. So maybe the player would have to find some sort of breathing apparatus. or you could have it pump toxic gas. Or if you have to blow it up, maybe place explosives on certain weak points in the bunker, which you can only find by looking at plans or looking at the terminals that have the virus on them. There you go, 2 much better quests to kill the Brotherhood, which doesn't even make sense as an objective for the Legion. When we return to Caesar, he tells us that his brain is on the fritz. The name of the quest is honestly hilarious, A Tumor Brute. It's a reference to Julius Caesar's line, A Tu Brute, from the Shakespeare play Julius Caesar. In fact, the entire idea of Caesar falling sick was inspired by the real-life Caesar. I really recommend that you read the behind-the-scenes section of the wiki for the quest. Anyways, we've seen this coming from various other moments in the game where he loses focus, blanks out, or completely forgets what he was talking about. This is because he has a brain tumor, so he sends us out to get the equipment for his brain. On the shopping list is auto-dock parts, a doctor's bag, and surgical tools. The latter 2 are pretty easy to get, you just have to find the right vendors to buy them off of. The former is in a one-dimensional dungeon, a vault, and yes, I do have a problem with this. The vaults in Fallout New Vegas are both great and awful. See, in Fallout 1 and 2, vaults were pretty easy to traverse because each floor was laid out so the player could see it. So it didn't really matter if the layout was unintuitive. But in Fallout New Vegas, the layout is so unintuitive, it just results in going down 1,000 corridors, backtracking, trying again. I feel like a DFS algorithm. The atmosphere, on the other hand, is so much better than any other Fallout game. Fallout New Vegas makes the vaults really creepy. Unfortunately, aside from some lore that is stored on a bunch of terminals that I didn't read, there's not much to this vault. Once you find the auto dock in the vault's clinic, you can grab the parts from it, bring all the shit back to Caesar, and do the operation. Now apparently you either need the medical equipment or the auto dock parts, but I got all of them. If you use the parts to repair the auto dock, you can do the surgery, or arrange for Caesar to die during the operation, but Lucius just takes his place. Anyways, with the homie all rested up, we can move on to the final part of the plan to make the NCR Sag, assassinate the president. Cato Hostilius is waiting in the middle of the desert for us to initiate the plan. What plan might that be? The plan of figure it out when you get there. Honestly though, this quest is really cool. There's a bunch of ways you can do it depending on your skill set. However, you have to be really sneaky about it because if the NCR is alerted about your presence, the quest has failed and Kimball doesn't come.
Hey yo, the pizza here! Oh, nigga!
Only rangers can see through the disguise that Cato gives you, so you're safe around troopers. The method I chose was to sneak my way past all the rangers and get to the top of this tower, kill the guy there, and snipe the president with a cowboy repeater. Once he's dead, everyone aggroes you, so time to set your companions to essential because even if you make it out of this fight, they sure as hell won't. Once you've done this and returned to Caesar, you can begin the endgame fight. Going ahead and starting the endgame fight, we talk to Lanius. Finally, this overhyped character gets some screen time, for about 2 minutes. This game's got some Ubisoft-itis. There's not much to say about this. You mob through Hoover Dam with some clowns who instantly die and fight some NCR troopers, which are pretty easy to kill. I mean, I rushed through most of the main story for the purposes of this video, and I was about level 16 when I did this, and I didn't have much trouble with this. After fighting through the 1,000 identical generator rooms, quite stellar level design, we get to General Oliver's lair. If we don't have the speech skills necessary to talk him down from erasing decades of history and surrendering, really, who wrote this? Then we have to kill him. He won't make it easy on us. In fact, he doesn't take any damage until you kill all of his cronies. I don't know if the AI just bugged on me or something, but really, why? What does this accomplish? Anyways, when the AI doesn't bug, he fucks off and goes to the top of the office building, which is full of traps. What's really swell about this part is that there's a long hall where an NCR veteran stands there taking pot shots with a fucking anti-material rifle. Of course he has infinite ammo, until you kill him. He's pretty damn hard to kill too, because he's got perfect aim, and 2 shots will kill you. You, of course, don't, and even with a decently high gun skill, he's hard to hit in VATS. You also can't really get closer to him, because the floor is full of traps, so you can either die trying to get close to him, or you can die trying to hit him from the other end of the room. There was a chance for some really cool duck behind cover action, inching your way closer to him, or they could have just done something like in The Last of Us with the fight with Davis. But no, I just used Project Nevada's bullet time to win. I made a save after killing him, but funnily enough, the save bugged. It didn't corrupt or anything, but a random amount of mines would spawn around me. How the fuck does this even happen? As I write this, I'm in my last semester of computer science, so it's not like I don't understand the inner working of games, but aside from an insanely unprofessional oversight, or an intentional implementation, I don't see how this could happen. My running theory is that every time the level is loaded, a random number of mines spawn in random locations, and due to some restrictions of where they can spawn, something to do with the position of my character had them all spawn around me. Again, I find it hard to believe that QA didn't find this, but whatever. Also, if you're gonna say that, oh, QA didn't have enough time, QA is done during development, so they likely had around a year to 6 months to find this. I found this on one playthrough. A QA team can be anywhere from 20 to multiple hundreds of testers on a single project. Anyways, so we made it past this fucking guy, now it's time to kill the general. He has a bunch of dudes in power armor, plus himself, minus the invincibility. You remember in Fallout 2 when I said throwing overpowered enemies at the player doesn't make the game difficult, it makes them annoying? Here it is again. If you grab the anti-material rifle and have perfect aim, you can pretty easily kill them. However, if you logically have lost most of your ammo due to the hundreds of soldiers you already had to fight through, good luck using anything else, because any other gun will take quite a lot of ammo to win with, not to mention quite a bit of luck. But whatever, let's say we killed Oliver and his buddies. We've now finished the game and get the traditional ending slides. And that sums up Fallout New Vegas, a game of endless ups and downs, but all around a really good game. I know when I was talking about Fallout 3 I said it's my favorite Fallout game, but okay, I'm writing and recording this cyclically, and I'm not going to throw away 10 minutes of footage to correct one mistake. Fallout New Vegas is my favorite, and if it's your favorite, you were justified in thinking that. Because speaking from a design perspective, it's a really good game, one of the best. The thing about it is that it just has insanely low points, whereas Fallout 3 is more consistent in the experience it gives you, which is a decent one. So what have we learned? The character creation can be short and sweet. Put quests in the starter town to get the character introduced to the game mechanics. Choice is essential in an RPG. RNG works well in an RPG, so use it. Explicit skill requirements result in a lot of waiting. Don't hype up a character just to barely have them on screen. Reward players for their attention to detail and for being forward-thinking. Make enemies killable. Some notes about this game. Honestly, I don't really like how this game ends. You already know how it's going to end from the intro, talking about the upcoming war on the dam. And this isn't something that any other Fallout game has done, and I don't really see it as a positive. What would have been better is what every other Fallout game did. Start with a simple premise, evolve the story into something bigger. Like take Fallout 1 for example, go get the water chip, but through your search you've drawn attention to yourself and thus the vault, to where the mutant threat becomes much bigger and more serious. Fallout 2, go find the Gek, but when you come back with it, the Enclave has kidnapped your tribe. Fallout 3, go find your dad, but once you find him, the Enclave kills him and takes control of the water purifier. None of these games told you you're going to be fighting mutants in the Enclave. They let the story progress how it's supposed to. It kinda kills the fun of the game if you already know how it's going to end. It's also nice how, for once, a Fallout game didn't railroad you into having particularly strong feelings towards a person or group of people. In Fallout 1, it kinda sucks that you can't just abandon your vault and keep playing. The game ends if the vault dies. In Fallout New Vegas, however, you don't have to chase Benny down to kill him. You can do whatever you like with him. Maybe you just want to chase him down to get answers. Your reasoning is your own, and the game leaves your relationship with Benny intentionally vague. So you could roleplay however you want. Hell, you could roleplay that your character and Benny were childhood friends, who went along all the West Coast scamming people and running, like Jimmy and Marco did in Better Call Saul. This is a great game for roleplaying. That's about all I have to say for Fallout New Vegas, and fuck. I guess I knew this time was coming. Now we move on to Fallout 4, or as I like to call it, the beginning of the end.
Truth is, the game was rigged from the start.
So after Bethesda fucked over Obsidian for not paying them their bonus for not getting a high enough Metacritic score, a score I 100% believe they manipulated so they wouldn't have to pay out, Bethesda took back control of the Fallout series and made absolutely zero marketing moves until months before the game was released. And let me tell you, I was hyped. I nearly shit myself when I saw the trailer. I remember being in 10th grade and all my friends talking about it and having to tell them to shut up because I wanted to wait until I got home to see it. I nagged Pete Hines to death on Twitter because I wanted to get a Pip-Boy edition, but they didn't have enough reserved for Canada for me to get one. I'm still salty about it. I later found one in a comic book shop for resale, but I never bought it. Anyways, fire up the game, and they made a mistake before we even get control of our character. They got rid of Ron Perlman. Why? Who the fuck knows? I guess he was too good at his job. Instead, they got Brian T. Delaney, who also voices the sole survivor. By no means is he a bad voice actor, but why get rid of Ron, man? Anyways, the game opens with a couple, the husband getting ready for a veterans ball, having spent time in the military, the wife getting ready to accompany him. Once we've made our character, our son, Sean, is crying, so we need to coo the child back to restfulness. After fucking the dog and building our character's base special stats, the TV announcer tells us that there are some bombs dropping. We sprint off to the vault, leaving our wife in the dust, who unfortunately catches up, annoying baby in tow, and we descend into the vault, narrowly escaping the shockwave of the bomb. There's so much wrong with this. So, in a game in which we are supposed to be role-playing, my character has a background in military service, a wife, a child with a name I didn't choose who lives in Sanctuary and is more or less well off, judging by the state of the house. This means that I can't play as a gay character if I wanted to because I have to start off in a straight relationship, meaning I have to play as a bisexual character at best or otherwise build around being ashamed of their sexuality. This is not good for role-playing. This is in fact antithetical to the whole idea of role-playing. I should have as little background knowledge of my character as possible. Fallout 3 wasn't even this bad. Whatever, once we're in the vault, we walk down a corridor, get frozen, our wife gets shot and our baby kidnapped, and Vsauce Michael walks off with our baby. We're refrozen and woken up 10 years later, so our total time since the bombs dropped was 210 years. Still gotta be far in the future, I guess. Whatever, now the game starts. We can waltz through the vault and figure out what happened, but we'll just not and leave right away. We get the classic eyes adjusting to natural light thing and head down the path to our old home, now destroyed. The robot butler is there and we look for the baby. You don't get a choice in giving a fuck. Personally, if it were me, I'd be glad the baby is gone. Kids are annoying as fuck. But whatever, we gotta look. With no luck, we move on to Concord and see some raiders. Now, raiders have undergone a lot of changes over the years. Originally, they were a long-haired guy with leather jacket and jeans. Then they became scantily clad tire shoulder guys in Fallout 3. Actually what you'd imagine a raider to look like in Fallout New Vegas. And now they're kind of better. They wear like actual clothes, mostly tattered rags with some scrap metal strapped to them. I think this is pretty good, probably what a raider would actually wear. The Minutemen, who have invented literally the most shit gun in the wasteland, give you a shit gun and ask you to help with the raiders trying to get into their building. It's never really stated what the raiders want from the Minutemen, since the Minutemen have literally nothing going for them. They've barely got any food, probably no money, and some hostages that no one really cares about. I guess the raiders are just here to be a fighting section. Once the raiders are cleared, the most unlikable character in Fallout, Sturgis, asks you to get on the roof, get in some power armor, and kill all the raiders. You have literally no reason to want to help them, but you can't progress the story otherwise. They have no information on where your son is. They only know that Diamond City exists and that it would be a good place to look. A piece of information that literally any wastelander could have told you. Anyways, whatever, let's get in the power armor. This part is so fucking stupid. First of all, why are you giving me power armor immediately? Like, yeah, I know it's not great power armor and I only have one fusion core, but was it really worth giving the player endgame gear for a stupid set piece? Speaking of power armor, let's talk about that. This may or may not be a controversial opinion, but I really like the way power armor is handled. The way it looks is fantastic. It doesn't look like a thin sheet of metal covering a person. It gives you your character bulk, and it definitely looks like a piece of armor that would require some sort of power. And the fact that it's powered by fusion cores, which can typically only be found through exploration, is a really great incentive to go and explore some buildings, especially in the downtown area. Also, the fact that you can mix and match parts is great. What I'm not so crazy about is the crafting, but we'll get to that later. With everything that isn't a Minuteman dead, we can get our oh so valuable bit of information about the city that has more than 5 people in it, but going there right away because our new friends the Minutemen need to force us to do the stupid base building shit. Yeah, the thing literally no one asked for. The base building is so fucking lame, dude. And for reference, I like Minecraft. I like coming up with cool new ways to build bases, like the time I made a jungle base that spans the tops of a couple of tall trees. This, however, is just lame. Despite what a certain blue-eyed programmer may have said, it does not just work. It's actually really hard to get things where you want them. And it doesn't even matter, because the lack of interesting looking parts makes every base look exactly the same. And no, it isn't completely optional. You have to use it at least once to complete the game, and you have to use it twice for the Minuteman ending. So let's just say we did the stupid base shit and now we're going to Diamond City. With the help of another set piece, we get introduced to Piper. Piper's an alright character. She can get kind of annoying at times, like listening to someone complain about capitalism. Like, you're making good points, but can we just talk about something else for a change? Anyways, if you play this part more than once, you'll realize that most of the dialogue in Fallout 4 doesn't actually give you any choice or affect how characters feel about you. The dialogue ends up going the exact same way no matter what you say, and while I'm sure this is not the case for some characters, it is the case for most characters. And you can see it by the way that characters respond to what you said, always being pretty unspecific. While, on the other hand, dialogue with almost any character in Fallout 1 and 2 would give you completely new trees of dialogue. But whatever, we get inside Diamond City, and we're advised by Piper to go see Nick Valentine, which is honestly a pretty cool name for a character. But it turns out Nick has been kidnapped and is being held captive in Vault 114. As a side note, Bethesda is getting uncomfortably close to the vault limit, because as per the lore, the world of Fallout only has 122 vaults. Anyways, after fighting our way through some indiscreet mafia type guys, we get our pal Nick, who leads us back out of the vault with more dudes to shoot, and at the end, a dude called Skinny Malone will confront us, telling us that they want Nick. What's really cool about this part is that with speech, you can get a few different outcomes. You can either get them to turn on each other or leave peacefully. This is cool, but nothing we haven't seen before in a better Fallout game. Once we've got Nick back at Diamond City, he asks us some questions. No matter what information we give him, we can't not give him the next clue, which I think kinda sucks. Take the game Heavy Rain for example. In Heavy Rain, you play as 4 characters trying to find the location of a kidnapped child. In one section of the game, playing as Ethan, the father of the child, you must report to the police and give information on the child. Now, while giving the wrong information doesn't affect the investigation, it's still interesting that you can give the wrong information if you aren't paying attention. What I think would have been really cool in this section is to ask the player to give information on Sean's kidnappers. Holy shit, the kid in both games are named Sean. Anyways, give the player 1 right answer and 3 wrong answers. Have 1 questline for players who give all the right answers, and 1 questline for players who gave 1 or more wrong answers. However, no, Nick just knows it's Kellogg and we have to nab the key to his house, located right here in Diamond City. There are a lot of ways to get the key, so I have to give Bethesda props for that, some of which you probably wouldn't even think to do, such as giving Mama Murphy drugs. It's cool that if you happen to have this quest unlocked and give chems to Mama Murphy, it'll push it along. It's a really nice touch. Anyways, no matter how you get into Kellogg's house, homie has left a lot of evidence around, just enough evidence for some dog meat fan service. Like, dude, I get it, I like dogs too. I had and currently have a dog, but like, did we really need this part? Anyways, you follow dog meat to this building, Fort Hagen. This took a bit of digging to figure out, but no, you can't do the fight with Kellogg if you happen to find this place while exploring. Fantastic. However, in Fallout 3, you can get your dad right away if you happen to find the garage. In fact, that's how I finished my first playthrough of the game. Here you get a decently designed dungeon with frequent enough resupplies to keep you going, but not too many so that you're overpowered. The game expects the player to have a decent arsenal of weapons by this point, and won't let you use just one of them. Meaning, you might have to use your shitty pipe rifle, which doesn't do that much damage just because it's the only thing that still has ammo. Even though the enemy variety is severely lacking, it makes sense contextually, and is pretty challenging, but in a fair way. When you finally meet Kellogg, you literally have no choice but to fight and kill him. In an RPG. You have to kill this guy. How the fuck did this game come after New Vegas? It's not like you don't know how to make speech checks, Bethesda. Like, I get it, he killed your wife, but the player doesn't have any reason to give a fuck about the wife because she has about 10 minutes of screen time before she dies. This would be a perfect opportunity to have one of those only if you found it moments, like say you found evidence of Kellogg assassinating someone important and use it as evidence to get him arrested in a quest you could set up prior. Or you could find a surgeon who could remove his brain chip if you were able to get him unconscious. This is such an uninspired, boring ending to this quest. Not to mention, the fight is absolute bullshit. Kellogg has like perfect aim, and his 2 synth friends have way too much health. Anyways, once the fight is over, you get his brain chip and bring it to the doctor and Good Neighbor, who puts you through some very boring flashbacks of Kellogg's life. They shoehorned in some references to locations from the first Fallout games like the Hub and NCR, as if that distracts from the fact that the soul of Fallout was left in a shallow grave on October 28, 2008. Eventually, you find out that the only way into the Institute is by teleporting in. Before moving on, I want to talk about the Fort Hagen dungeon. Something I didn't realize until I actually played through it again is how much I like the gunplay in Fallout 4. It's so average, but I love it much more than the gunplay in Call of Duty or another first-person shooter. I don't even know what it is about it, I just like it. This is one thing I would definitely not have a problem with returning in future installments. Honestly, this game has a lot of quality of life improvements. The hand movements when using the Pip-Boy, the random mugging events that happen outside of Diamond City, grenade and melee hotkeys, this is the stuff that just works. Hell, even the world looks good, not only graphically, but personally. I feel like Fallout 4's Wasteland really captured the essence of what Fallout has always been. I mean, look at the opening cutscene from Fallout 1. The way it pans out to a broken down home and a downtown skyline all blown apart. And now look at Fallout 4's Wasteland. Broken down homes with holes blown in them, only now raiders occupying them. The raiders will always have chem coolers, showing that most of them are doing what they do to fuel an addiction. Even if it's only a little, it gives them a personality. That along with the terminals scattered around where they write about their recent exploits. I almost feel bad talking so harshly about this game because I know that there was real effort put into this. But they just missed what was really vital for Fallout to be Fallout. You've heard it before and you'll hear it again. This is a good game, but it's a horrible Fallout game. There's an item in this game that just sums the whole game up to me, the lunchboxes. When you go to pick up a lunchbox, it bursts open with the sound of one of those party noisemaker things and will spit out an object, most of which are pretty useless. And it's the sound that really gets me. It makes me sad every time I hear it, because if you listen to it, there's a hint of sadness giving up at the end. And that's what this game is to me. Like, all the elements were there, but a lack of effort or a lack of knowledge on how to do this properly turned it into what it is. They could have just looked at New Vegas, it did so much right, but they didn't, and even though they tried, the end product just isn't what most people wanted. Anyways, let's move on. We need to teleport into the Institute, but first we need to figure out how to teleport into the Institute. That means that we need to find the scientist who escaped the Institute, Brian Virgil, who was mentioned by a synth courser in Kellogg's memories. All we know is that he's somewhere in the glowing sea, and we need to find him. The quest marker doesn't lead you directly to him, it only leads you to the glowing sea. This is wonderful because it makes the player feel like they actually accomplished something when they find him, and it also might make the player question how many supplies they'll actually need when they go. But we're in a rush, so let's go now. The glowing sea is absolutely wonderful, and my favorite area in any Fallout game. This is what we've been waiting for. The way that the trees are all blasted and tilted, the way that everything there is absolutely demolished, but there's still some remnants of things that were once there, like a highway overpass. It's absolutely amazing to see. The enemies there are also pretty tough. I had the bright idea, since I was low on all ammo except 38s, that I would get a pipe rifle and upgrade it to the max. Didn't help. Anyways, once you make it through the things trying to kill you, you might find the Children of Adam. Actually, you'll probably find them. The game kinda, sorta, but not really, but actually does lead you to them. And fuck this part. The Children of Adam were originally kind of a meme in Fallout 3. They were just a small church in Megaton that would preach in front of the bomb in Megaton. Like, they could have made a return in Fallout 4, sure, but why are they so serious? The writers are taking them so seriously when they're such a goofy faction. Anyways, if you pass a speech check, or don't, doesn't really matter, they'll tell you where Virgil is. They had a chance for some good game design here, where they would only give up the location if you passed a speech check, and otherwise you'd have to find him on your own, but whatever. Like, why even have the speech check? Whatever. Once we're outside of Virgil's cave, there's a death claw, but you can very easily sneak past it. Going into the cave, you'll find Virgil, a super mutant with comically small glasses, who will tell you about the Institute. He'll tell you that you need to kill a courser and get the chip in their heads to be able to access the Institute, which means we have to first find a courser. Virgil warns us that it will be pretty tough, giving the player the foresight needed to prepare for the fight. He'll also tell us that around CIT ruins, tuning our Pip-Boy's radio to the lower end of the band will lead us to them. Because electromagnetism or something? I don't know. Anyways, that gives us a place to start, but again, the game won't tell us where to go. I really like the direction this game took with these quest markers. If there is something you wouldn't have any reason to be able to find, the game won't tell you where it is. It's great. Anyways, once you get to the CIT ruins, you can tune your radio to the courser signal, and if you look at the little radio band thing, it's actually on the lower end, which was a nice touch. You'll hear beeps coming from your radio, which will increase in pitch as you get closer. You'll also get little notifications in the corner, which is honestly a much better indicator. Once you get to 100%, the quest marker will be updated, leading you into the Green Tech Genetics building. Remember when I was talking about Fallout 3, and I mentioned that it would be cool if the Enclave was already looking for the Gek in Vault 87? Well, it seems like they retroactively took my advice, because the Gunners are already there looking for the Courser. Actually, that's not entirely true. The Gunners and the Courser are both here, but I couldn't exactly figure out what was happening. There's a guy on the intercom who updates the Gunners on the location of the Courser, but the Courser is looking for some sort of code. I'm assuming the Gunners were using it as some base, and the Courser came in to get something from them. What I find really stupid about this part is that the Courser can be killed by one person, but there's like 30 Gunners in here. How can they not kill the Courser? The Courser has hostages, but by the time you get to them, they're mostly dead. Also, why would the Gunners try to kill you? Wouldn't they want help handling the Courser? What would have been a lot more interesting is if they helped you get to the Courser, then tried to kill you, and you had to fight your way out, not in. But whatever, this dungeon is pretty fun, if not incredibly frustrating. Some of the Gunners have missile launchers, which will never cease to infuriate me in this goddamn game. They're almost always one-hit kills, which obviously makes sense, but there's also no real way to get around them because the missiles fly insanely fast. I never liked missile launchers in Fallout games. We honestly should get rid of them, because if you make anything other than a missile launcher build, you're pretty much fucked. Anyways, in the video you'll see me kill a Courser in God mode. That's because I ran out of stim packs. I actually found some Nuka-Cola Quantums on my way to the Courser after I ran out of stim packs, but After I died, they were gone, and I would have had to kill the Courser on a tiny sliver HP, or backtrack, get more stim packs, which are fucking expensive, and then go back and kill the Courser. I'm honestly only playing the game for the footage, but word of advice, bring at least 30 stim packs and save a lot. Anyways, with the Courser dead, we could take the chip out of its head and bring it to Dr. Amari. Except, Dr. Amari doesn't know what to do with it. She directs us to the railroad, who, once again, doesn't have a quest marker. You'll have to follow some red lines on the ground which will lead you to their church, where they have their base. They leave a little puzzle for you, the letters and their positions. However, my first time playing the game, I straight up guessed the password and got it on the first try. In any case, they'll let us in because we killed the Courser, and I guess the Synth Protection Agency is really glad that we killed a synth. Honestly though, this faction asks a really interesting question. If we were able to simulate consciousness, is it right to then enslave it? I mean, to me the answer is a resounding no, but the story of the game doesn't really explore well enough. The Institute are just straight up bad guys, two-dimensional enemies with nothing particularly interesting about them. We only have the Railroad who cares, but no one else really does. The Minutemen are too interested in being two-dimensional good guys who help people for literally no reason, and the Brotherhood are just interested in the Institute's technology. I like how the Brotherhood were treated in this game, but Bethesda, can we give it a fucking rest? The Brotherhood have been in every goddamn Fallout game since the first one to this point. Hell, the only reason they're not in Fallout 76 is because I don't even think they existed when that game is set. Why did the Brotherhood always need to be a joinable faction in these games? Why can't we have something more interesting? You came up with the Institute, the Minutemen, and the Railroad, and at least the Institute and the Railroad are kind of interesting. I mean, they have their own different views, and that might be a bit black and white for most people to agree on. You just need to think a bit harder. You just need to take a bit longer. I know this game took 7 years to develop, but for fuck's sake, Bethesda, take another fucking year if it means I can get a story that I actually need to fucking think about. The Brotherhood are good in this game in that they're more true to the original Brotherhood. Brotherhood just mobbed through the Commonwealth unannounced and uninvited and set up shop and killed anything in their way, and they have a perfectly good reason to do so. Elder Maxon will tell you that the Institute is much more technologically advanced than the Brotherhood, and they need to harness the Institute's technology. What fucking blows about this is how, for doing literally one easy as fuck quest, the Brotherhood just lets you in. You get promoted to Initiate, and then for the noble act of taking a vertebrate trip to the blimp, you get the rank of Knight. Anyways, that was a huge digression. Back to the main plot, the Railroad will let us in and decode the Courser chip for us. This will give us the ability to teleport into the Institute. Once we've done that, we can return to Virgil, who will give us crude plans to make a teleporter. And speaking of teleportation, that's another missed opportunity. There's a theory that teleportation without death is impossible. That would have been a very interesting idea to explore. If you're unfamiliar with the idea, here's a quick rundown. Imagine a device that can teleport you from one place to another. However, in order to teleport you, the machine must break you down molecule by molecule, atom by atom, to see what you're made of, effectively killing you. Then you must be reconstructed, molecule by molecule, atom by atom, in a new location. Is this a new person who just so happens to be exactly like you? Or is this you? Better yet, imagine you're struck by lightning, every atom in your body being completely dispersed, gone. And at the exact same instant, a bolt of lightning strikes somewhere else and causes the atoms around it to combine into an exact copy of you. Is that you? Did you just teleport? Or did you just die and are now something new? This could have been an interesting question to ask, but no, teleportation cool, so let's stop asking questions and make the teleporter. In order to build the teleporter, we need to pick a faction to join. Our choices are the Brotherhood, the Minutemen, and the Railroad. The Minutemen are so fucking boring that they're out. And I've already played through the Railroad's ending, so we'll go with the Brotherhood. The Brotherhood needs us to do a quest for us to like them, which is taking a fort by force to take all the mini-nukes in it. Fair enough, seems like a good plan. How do they plan on accomplishing this? The worst way possible. So you board a vertibird, which you use to kill a behemoth. This would then imply that these are the same mutants from Fallout 3. Once the behemoth and a few more mutants are dead, they let you out and you have to fight the rest of them with whatever you have on you. This plan fucking sucks. Despite the huge risk of failure, they easily could have lost the vertibird. What would have made a lot more sense was to have one vertibird go, take out the behemoth, then send another vertibird while the original one goes for repairs, while letting the sole survivor off to lead the mutants in the building outside, to then be killed by the vertibird or a Brotherhood assault team. I get that it's a game and they want to challenge the player, but this plan makes no sense, and for a paramilitary group, they should be smarter than this. Anyways, once you finish this quest, you can then make the portal. If you don't have the parts, the game will tell you where you might be able to find them, which is pretty weak. But maybe they're just really excited about finally showing you the Institute, so hurry up and build the teleporter. Once it's built, we can finally get into the Institute and find our son. Once we teleport into the Institute, we're met with a very chrome environment. I guess this is what science labs look like in the future. We hear a voice on the loudspeaker that beckons us forth, and soon you find your son, Sean. Only it's not actually your son, it's a synth of your son. An elderly man comes forth and talks to you, and it turns out that he is actually your son. And instead of your son being gone for 10 years, he was actually gone for 60. He was originally kidnapped in 2227, and it's now 2287. Which explains why Kellogg had all those cybernetic implants, and why he knew all about these different places and factions from the West Coast. He's old as fuck. This honestly impressed me. This is a good twist. Sean asks us for a chance to prove that the Institute isn't the boogeyman the locals make it out to be, and you don't have a choice but to agree. You're then free to come and go as you please, despite the Institute being the best kept secret in the entire wasteland. We've got a goal that the Brotherhood sent us here with, to get Dr. Lee to rejoin the Brotherhood. She isn't too keen on the idea and sends us out to find out what happened to Virgil. Finding his holotape and grabbing his serum while we're at it, we can prove to her that his transformation was covered up by the Institute. Seeing that she's been lied to, she'll rejoin the Brotherhood. For the next little while, the Brotherhood and Institute alike will send us out to cookie cutter go here, shoot the guys, come back type quests. And nothing particularly wrong with it because Fallout 4 does lean pretty heavily on its gunplay, but it's also kind of uninspired. Finally, we need to get... No, fuck, god damn it. Could we not have one fucking Bethesda game without some stupid set piece bullshit? It's Liberty Prime. We need to get Liberty Prime working again.
One time is funny, two times it's fucking annoying, no?
Fuck this whole thing. Liberty Prime was kinda cool in Fallout 3, but now we're just getting Fallout 3 Part 2. So we need to get magnets or some shit for Liberty Prime's legs. What would have been cool here was a choice. You could either repair Liberty Prime and lose the resources that repairing him would take, or go without Liberty Prime and keep your resources. Furthermore, they could have had optional upgrades for him. Say you want him to be able to shoot his lasers, then you have to go and find some sort of component to do that, and if you want his nukes, then there's a quest for that. And maybe you could add some other grades, like a minigun on his arm or shoulder missiles. This would make the player's reliance on Liberty Prime up to them. If the player doesn't want Liberty Prime to be a big part of the fight, they can just not upgrade him, otherwise they can. Anyways, after getting his leg magnets, we also need to get him his nukes, which is in a stockpile in the Glowing Sea. I'm gonna be honest, I like this, not only because of the dungeon, but because of where the dungeon is. I already mentioned how much I like the Glowing Sea, but I especially like how a nuclear facility is in the Glowing Sea. Almost every Fallout game has had a bomb site. Fallout 1 has the Glow, Fallout 3 has 87, New Vegas has Cottonwood Crater, and Fallout 4 has the Glowing Sea. The difference between the Glowing Sea and every other bomb site is that the Glowing Sea was a strategical position for the Chinese to strike. A nuclear facility is a priority target for your enemy because that decreases your ability to strike back. I just appreciate the thought that went into the placement of the Glowing Sea and the locations inside of it. Anyways, once we go and confirm that the nukes are indeed there, we let the Brotherhood know and they can go get them. Going back to see the Elder, he tells us that Paladin Danse is actually a synth, and orders us to kill him. You can't tell him you don't want to, which some may see as a bad thing, but keep in mind that the Brotherhood is a militaristic faction. You don't typically argue with your commanding officer in the military. When you go see the Paladin, he tells you that he still hates synths, and that if you don't kill him, he'll do it himself. The player is supposed to have some sort of attachment to Paladin Danse by this point, and I guess that's possible if you had him as a companion. I mean, if I had to kill Raoul in New Vegas or Piper in Fallout 4, I'd be pretty bummed out. In Fallout 3, the Brotherhood were kind of the good guys, and here in Fallout 4, I appreciate that the writers took a new direction and made them out to be who they really are, xenophobic and strict, and not always the pinnacle of morality. Following with that motif, the Brotherhood, after promoting us to Paladin, have us go and take out the Railroad. The player by now has probably spoken to the Railroad a few times, and might even have Deacon as a companion. Once again, by severing the player's attachment to characters in the world, the game gets us to question the faction that we're working with. This also happens with other faction quests, where you have to kill the Brotherhood, who, up till this point, we haven't had any negative experiences with. I really like what this game did with the factions, I just wish they had gone more in depth with what they were about. But I like how no one faction, aside from the Minutemen, but who actually gives a fuck about the Minutemen, is absolutely good. They all do questionable shit. I honestly can't complain about the third act of this game, it works surprisingly well. Honestly, the Brotherhood has us going off and doing a bunch of shit, and I'm sorry to give it out in a list like this, but after all that, we need to go get some sciencey shit for Liberty, bane of my fucking existence. We take a vertibird to the roof for some reason that makes no tactical sense, and then go all the way to the basement. I really don't like how the writers had the Brotherhood make horrible military decisions. You're going to the basement, why go to the one place farthest from the basement? From a gameplay perspective, it makes sense, but from a story perspective, it really doesn't. Just fucking walk through the front door. Anyways, there's a bunch of synths to fight there, hop in the elevator, and we get a pretty cool set piece where they cut the power to the elevator, making the elevator slam to the floor. From there, we fight our way into the basement to get a MacGuffin. The MacGuffin lives in the land of radiation, so you have to use your items properly. The room just before the MacGuffin will eliminate all your radiation, so once you find it, if you're running a bit hot, you can go in there to sort of heal. Or you can just die and load back and then run straight to it. However, while you're there, the only way to stop yourself from gaining rads is to actually use Radaway, not Rad-X, which kind of flips their uses on their head because typically Radaway gets rid of radiation, but since there's so much radiation, the effects cancel each other out, and the Radaway just stops you from getting irradiated. Anyways, once you're done being ghoulified, the bullshit hard security goes off and there's like 1,000 robots to kill. I really hate when Fallout 4 does this, and it does it a lot, just throwing a bunch of enemies at you with no thought to cover or strategic positioning. It's just a big ass room with enemies in it. Not to say that all the dungeons are like this, but a lot of them are. An example of a good dungeon would be Fort Hagen or Green Tech Genetics, which are structured in such a way that there's cover but also the possibility for flanking. Those work really well. Once we get back to the airport, we can power up Liberty Prime and he starts wrecking everything in his path for some reason. This initiates the in-game fight, which I wasn't aware of, but alright, whatever. You have to follow Liberty Prime all the way to CIT with a bunch of different fighting sections interspersed. What's really shit about this part is, not only does Liberty Prime steal your kills, getting involved will more often than not get you nuked by him. Apparently Bethesda didn't have the oversight to make Liberty Prime not nuke the player, so the only way to guarantee your safety is to not get involved. In what is arguably at this point an FPS, the best way to play is to not shoot. I was scrolling through fucking Instagram while I was recording this. The entire March of Liberty Prime is an absolute sleeper, garbage part of the Brotherhood's questline. The idea to bring him back was completely ridiculous, just some shitty fan service. Anyways, once the torture is over, Prime finds the Institute using the blue eye thing and then blasts the fuck out of it, opening a hole for the player to jump down. From here you fight some synths, gorillas, and scientists. I really didn't want to have to kill the gorillas, but here we are. This is again a dungeon with nothing special about it. It's literally just the Institute. You break into their reactor, install a bomb on it, tell your son he sucks, and blow up the Institute, ending the game. So that was an experience. Before moving on, there are some things I really want to touch on about this game. So first of all, speech checks. I like them. I really like them actually. Here's the thing, every past Fallout game didn't really give the player a reason to invest in charisma because they could just pump the speech skill. Meaning you could be a strength 10 Chad who also has impeccable speech. The system makes the player choose, however, the game doesn't really account for failing speech checks. There's literally one part with Elder Maxon where you get 4 speech checks, and if you fail he just says, "Wanna try again?" I mean, come on. That shit's laughable. It's basically the writers saying that they give up. So if the game had consequences for the player failing speech checks, that would make for a more interesting experience. And while we're on the topic of skills, the leveling is something of a flawed masterpiece. I really don't like the removal of skills. I'll talk more in depth about this later, but there are some skills that don't need to be there. However, overall, the skills were a cool way to build your character. Aside from that, the perk system is actually really good, giving every special level of every stat its own unique perk. It's really cool. Some of them were made to replace skills like the accuracy and damage increase perks, but a lot of them were really cool like Vans or Rooted, though I would make that one Endurance. Adding back skills and reworking the perk chart would be a really great leveling system in my opinion. It also makes special a lot more important. Another little thing that I would change is I would make leveling a lot less common like in Fallout 3 or New Vegas. Lastly, the weapon crafting. Now don't get me wrong, it's a really cool system, but there's just something about it that rubs me the wrong way. Like, I can make a pristine, high-powered scope all by myself. What I think would be a cooler system would be if homemade components were worse than pristine components you could find, buy off vendors, or be rewarded with. The weapon modding system made the game a lot more interesting, but it just lacks a bit of depth. Honestly, Fallout 4 isn't that bad of a game. I found myself having a lot of fun playing through it, often spending 4 or 5 hours at a time. The game has wonderful combat, and is just all around fun to play. It just suffers from a lot of writing flaws that seem prevalent in Bethesda's writing staff, and it's a damn shame. So what have we learned from this game? Number 1, good gameplay is vital. Number 2, no one-dimensional good or bad guys. 3, motivation should make sense for the story, not what would be most fun. 4, get rid of Liberty Prime. 5, write the factions to be nuanced and make the player do questionable things. 6, Leveling has room for improvement. 7. Make special matter. So that's it, huh? That's all the Fallout games. All 5 of them. There couldn't possibly be another. Oh fuck, oh god, please, no. Fallout 76 exists. That's all I really need to say about it. I don't need to sit here and tell you everything that's shit about it because we'd be here for a very, very long time and people with more subscribers than me have already told you. There will be no Fallout 76 video and I will not be going over the story because I'm not reinstalling that piece of shit and there's no fucking story. So instead, I'm going to go over the 3 things that I liked. Fallout 76 brought back weapon condition, which was a fun element. I don't even know if Fallout 76 weapon condition even has gun jamming, but that's what made it fun. It makes gunfights a lot more tense and exciting when your shitty gun is jamming up on you, and you need to fix that before you can keep firing. Another great design decision was that scrap fixes your guns, not another of the same gun. To me it's more realistic and gives the player a reason to carry a bit of scrap on them, not just stockpile it onto companions. Fallout 76's second good thing was that they finally put us right after the war, 30 or so years after the bombs fell. I don't think they did the world justice, but we don't need to be a billion years in the future. 30 or 50 years, with everything still shitty, would be a lot more interesting in my opinion. Fallout 76's last good idea was the Pip-Boy. It looks cool and more Fallout-esque. It's more reminiscent of the Pip-Boy from Fallout 1 and 2, and I wouldn't mind that model making its way to a new entry. And that's it. That's all Fallout 76 did right. There's no what did we learn section, because all we learned is that Bethesda is money hungry.
You're here. Good. We've got a problem. A big one. The controller chip for our water purification system is giving up the ghost.
Hey, you sound like you're hoping I'll fill in some gaps for you.
Lou tell me watch place. Not let no one in. Not normals most. Take normals to the loo. Hey.
As long as there are differences, we will tear ourselves apart fighting each other.
I am proud of you, Chosen.
The good guys won this one.
Seems like wherever I go, it's always the same. Folks just never leave each other alone.
Fellow Californians, who have come so far, you answer the call to service was
Do you have any conception of how busy I am? I run this city and have precious little time to waste with you.
I am no villain.
You have no idea what I or
The Unity
is about.
The American people are worth fighting for. The future must be secure. I won't let you stand in the way of that.
You are truly a hero. Know that the people of Shady Sands are most grateful.
Man, going back and playing all these games was actually a lot of fun. I hadn't played Fallout 1 since like 2015, and especially playing them sequentially, the changes were a lot more radical to see. I'd honestly recommend it, it's a good time. It also took for fucking ever. As of writing this, the script has been under writing for maybe 4 months or so. I started it because I was working for a company that never gave me anything to do, so I got bored. I'm honestly surprised I'm still writing this. But anyways, you may have noticed, I never answered the question this video asks. How do you make the perfect Fallout game? Well, to do that, we basically need to construct a Fallout game, piece by piece, and analyze every other Fallout game to eventually come up with something. So you may be thinking it's best to start at the beginning, but we're going to start with the setting because that's where the beginning exists. Keep in mind that the rest of the video will be a lot more opinion based than the rest, even though the first part was pretty opinion based. So, the setting. Fallout 1, 2, and New Vegas put us in a desert, which isn't really that interesting to explore. Fallout 3 was a bit better, putting us in a big-ass city, but at the time, the tech didn't exist to have all that out without loading screens. Fallout 4 demonstrated that we are now at a point where we can have a huge-ass city fully available to the player. so I would take it to the biggest city in the States, New York. There's a lot of debate on whether or not New York still exists, but the only source that says that New York is gone also says that Washington, D.C. is gone, which it clearly isn't, and Tactics says in no uncertain terms that it's still there. I think walking through a post-nuclear Times Square would be a really cool area to explore. You could call it the Empire Wasteland or some shit. And the setting is not only the place, but the time. I would put it not too long after the war. I know, big surprise. Let's just say 21, 27, or somewhere around there. 50 years after the war. I think the state of the settlements would be a lot more interesting, because they'd still be developing, and the wasteland as a whole would be a lot more inhospitable, bringing back the feeling of helplessness from the first two games. This, I think, would give us the best of both worlds, the fun and engaging wasteland of the 3D games, and the fear and resource hoarding of the isometric games. The beginning of the game could really be anything, as long as it's modeled after Fallout New Vegas. It could start in a vault, as long as Bethesda doesn't go over the vault limit 122. You've been warned. What I would do as an intro is have all the residents of a New York Vault 83 preparing to leave the vault. The player constructs their character using Fallout 4's character building system and exits the vault with some other named characters. Some of the fellow vault inhabitants will ask the player for help getting food, establishing some sort of base, a roof over their heads with spots to sleep. This would be a good quest introducing the player to speech, combat choices, and skill checks like Fallout 3 did. The quest would essentially be the equivalent to Fallout New Vegas' Ghost Town gunfight. The leveling system, as I discussed before, would be a mix of Fallout 4's perk chart and classic Fallout skills. Speech would be gone, big and small guns would be compressed into one, and the survival skill from Fallout New Vegas would make its triumphant return. The way I would make speech work is a mix of Fallout 4 and Fallout New Vegas's. It would be your charisma modified by a skill, creating your chance of success. So say you had 6 charisma and 50 guns, for example, and say it's an easy check. That won't net many rewards. The algorithm I have in mind would be 6 times 10 making 60, plus the gun skill 50 divided by 10 making 5, and adding them together to make 65. Since the player isn't very charismatic, nor are they particularly good with guns, they can try the check, but they might not make it. However, since it's an easy check, they still have a chance. This keeps characters from having to pump charisma to pass speech checks like in Fallout 4, and keeps players from ignoring speech checks until they meet the arbitrary skill requirement, and also keeps characters from ignoring charisma like in every other game. For medium difficulty checks, I'd do charisma times 7.5, skill divided by 7.5 for hard checks, charisma times 5, skill divided by 5, and for very hard checks, charisma times 2.5 and skill divided by 2.5. This would create a chance of 52, 40, and 35 respectively for our character. And like the system present in Fallout 4, I would just highlight the difficulty of the check, no percentage or skill minimum. The combat would be ripped straight from Fallout 4, I honestly don't see any problems with it. I like the way shooting feels, VATS, all of it. I would bring back weapon degradation because it was honestly a great system. As Al Chestbreach said, it adds to the oh shitness of the game. And I would implement an alternative weapon modding system that I briefly mentioned before. To elaborate further, all craftable mods would either be homemade or something like that, and pristine mods of a higher condition, quality and durability would be buyable, findable, lootable, and used as quest rewards. I think that they would add a cool layer of depth to the game. It would still give junk a purpose because they could still be used as a substitute until something better is found. Now, moving towards the story side of things, another important part of the game is factions. I think that we should leave the Brotherhood out of this one. I mean, they've been in literally every Fallout game since the first two, and we don't need to see them again. And also, we can get rid of super mutants. These two things seem to be what Bethesda thinks Fallout is about, but the developers at Obsidian were smarter than that. They didn't need to rehash old factions over and over again, and they didn't need to lean on the Enclave as a crutch like in Fallout 3. I think that the writers could flesh out some of the other factions, like maybe the beginnings of the Institute, or maybe even create some new factions. Maybe there's a group of Vault-Tec middle managers who found out what Vault-Tec was really doing and wanted to free the residents of the vaults. Or a group whose sole mission is to kill raiders in order to keep the wasteland safe. There are so many interesting aspects of human behavior that could be explored post-apocalypse, and yet we keep getting, these are the good guys, these are bad guys, kill the bad guys and be a good guy. The only games that didn't do this were Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 4, which are the two most recent games in the series, which gives me some hope that the series is moving towards a better place. We just gotta ignore that 76 exists. I'm not going to write the whole story for Bethesda, it's not my job, but I feel like I've given them enough to get started. It honestly makes me sad the state of Fallout these days, because Fallout 3 was one of the first games I ever obsessed over. It means a lot to me. It was very formative for me. It's what got me interested in science, PC gaming, and got me into modding, thus computer science, which as I write this, I am currently pursuing a career in. I want to like whatever comes next, I really do. But almost every game has severely missed the mark in some way. Hopefully they can learn from their mistakes. Alright, I'm done talking, at least for now. Thank you so much for all 2 of you who made it this far in the video. This video was a huge undertaking, especially since it's my first video that I actually went through and edited. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you decide to subscribe for more video essays that will be coming out maybe twice a year. This video took me over 6 months to make between school, work, and lack of motivation. So with my first video essay done, I'd like to say thank you for watching. And don't forget to like if you liked it, dislike it if you dislike it, leave a comment letting me know what you think, and subscribe if you think I'm right. See you in the next one.
Приближается к точке взрыва. Высота 4000 метров. Осталось 3 секунды. 2, 1, 0. Взрыв сопровождался световой вспышкой необычной силы. Полевой столб, поднимающийся с земли, быстро увеличился в объеме. Через несколько секунд после взрыва диаметр полевого столба составлял около 10 километров.